We are back in, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Watts, and let's see if we can do this on time.
We will do our very best. We do look forward to the engagement, the conversation, and the deeper lean into finances today. I think this morning's session provided an amazing preface to the conversations that we're getting ready to go into. But before I kind of provide some highlights, I don't know if Tamika Edwards and Michelle Finchworth are in the room, but I would like to publicly acknowledge them. Today is Administrative Assistants Day. And they are here working away behind the scenes, making everything come together as they always do in partnership with us. They're not in the room, but if you see them today, as we close out, please extend your sincere gratitude, as I have, and will continue today, for all that they do, because it's important work behind the scenes, but critical. But today, we will continue to evolve in our efforts around transparency, clarity, and accountability as it relates to finance. Our goal continues to be to provide for you a clear view of where we are financially, what is actually driving our budget, and how decisions are being made to align to both the immediate and long-term needs of the district. I would like to also acknowledge that this process, I think you all heard in our board retreat, represents a meaningful shift and transition from the way we've funded things or developed a budget in the past. Every dollar has been interrogated. We have examined not just what we fund, but why we fund it, how we fund it, and how it impacts our student outcomes and operational efficiency. And I think as I look around at my team, there have been some real choices and real trade-offs made in this process. And I just want to publicly thank my team in partnership with A&M and the finance department for leaning in and owning this work, developing their financial literacy and their stewardship. You will see today a preliminary budget. If you've looked through your documents, you already have some insight into some of the things that you'll see, but there's an approximate, right now, 5% increase from last year. It's important that you all are clear about why that is, and I think some of what you learned today probably gives you some indication. Much of it has to do with just sustaining operations, just maintaining how we do business in a mandatory and a baseline way. But today, I am excited to be able to present some of our strategic investment proposals to you that will underscore and hopefully manifest our new strategic plan as it emerges and develops. So as you'll see throughout today's presentation, the investments that we'll be raising up to you are not random. They are targeted, measurable, and most importantly, grounded in impact. So today is not just about numbers. Collectively, our Team 10 and our extended team through Cabinet, we are working to build a system where every student in every school every day experiences excellence. And I am excited to hand it over to our strategic partner in that work, A&M, and they will get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Watts, and good afternoon, Board, Cabinet. Oh. Sorry. So a little bit about today's objectives. So today we'll kind of give you an overview of the financial needs of the district, the things that we've talked about, including the draft school and department budgets. We did some work to codify expenses into 3 categories: mandatory, baseline, and strategic. We'll give you an overview of the types of expenditures that are included in each of those items. And I think what'll probably most interesting for you all are the department budgets around the department presentations around some of the strategic budget requests. You'll hear from Dr. Taylor talking more about ROI and the work that the district has done to continue to advance that. In addition to the strategic plan work, that Dr. Watts and Dr. Taylor have been working on, and what the budgetary impacts of some of those strategies will be. And then last, we'll kind of seek feedback, right? So I think there are a number of places throughout this presentation. It's a workshop. So be prepared to work alongside with us, offering feedback. We expect lots of rich discussion as we go through the presentation at points today. So we just wanted to ground you on where we are in kind of the cycle. You've seen this slide probably every time you see me, but what where we are today is what's in yellow. Today we'll talk about those strategic investments, where we have those reductions and redesigns, and where there's opportunities for trade-offs. I'll just also flag here that in the next one, right, that's the May board meeting, that's where we'll continue to, thank you, prioritize those choices and trade-offs, and we'll have some preliminary discussions about how those decisions would impact the millage rate. So efficiency opportunities, as we've talked about today, you guys heard a lot about the different measures that people take during times of austerity and trying to cut back. There are a lot of things the district is already doing and already trying to think about that are in progress to achieve operational and financial efficiency. We've sort of started through a staffing and benchmarking analysis. There's more work to be done there, but given the amount of your budget that is sort of driven by staffing, having a good understanding of how your staffing levels compare to peer districts is really important to make sure you're making the right investment in that space. Thinking about capital and life cycle planning. So what you can do sort of over the long term to make sure you have a good idea of when and where your capital expenditures need to be made over the 5 to 10 year horizon. Realignment on those above allotment positions, so really thinking about in the classrooms where we're over QBE allotments, making sure that we are sort of aligned on how we're spending those positions, how we're utilizing those positions, and we're getting the highest and best use of them. And then with the life cycle planning of devices, I know earlier today we kind of talked about the benefits of one-to-one and what that means in terms of replacement, but as you sort of maybe change your strategy around that, you may see a difference in the need to sort of replace those over time, but being intentional about how you structure that replacement cycle. And then overtime analysis. This year, you'll see that there is overtime budgeted for when other years it wasn't necessarily directly budgeted for. And so as you think about sort of budgeting for overtime and overtime spending, you want to make sure that you're controlling overtime spending and that the right controls are in place to make sure that there's no unintentional sort of overspending in that area. Some of the things that there's opportunities to sort of explore in the future, I would say there's transportation. You saw today, the local funding pays for a lot of the transportation. And so I think the extent to which you're able to optimize transportation and routing to reduce costs or drive efficiencies there would reduce the amount that the locality has to spend to support it. Food service optimization, thinking about what you all spend on school nutrition, that's an increase this year over last year, excuse me. And so thinking about what you can do to sort of manage those costs. Purchasing optimization, thinking about how you can better refine purchasing and procurement practices, vendor management to sort of drive down those costs. Enrollment forecasting, planning improvements, we've talked a lot about sort of the impact of enrollment, the mix of the enrollment on the amount of state funding and the cost to educate students. And so thinking about how that will impact costs over time. Opportunities for performance-based compensation, particularly at central office. So today, during Dr. Barnes's presentation, you'll hear some about that sort of at the classroom level, but really thinking about what opportunities there are to expand that to the central office, student support and special education staffing, how that can impact sort of some of the ratios we talked about today, how people are classified, and what that should look like in terms of the classroom experience for students. And then Medicaid reimbursement optimization. You guys are already starting to do some of this now, but thinking about what more you can do to increase the match and the revenue that you're getting for Medicaid reimbursable cost. So again, on the right side, we'll see some of the things that are in progress, but over here, there are opportunities to explore more in the future. Okay, so in this section, we'll talk a little bit more about the budget overview and our approach to this phase of the budget that we're in. So this is kind of where we've been and where we are over the course of creating this zero-based, modified zero-based budgeting approach. So right now, through all of the hard, intense work of the departments, I'll sort of echo Dr. Watts and her appreciation for the departments and dealing with us, going back and forth, challenging some of their requests, pushing back, coming back with additional evidence when we've sort of challenged some of the things that they brought forth, to really get to this point where we've vetted the process, we've vetted the budget, we've thought about opportunities for trade-offs, we've pushed back on costs that, you know, people were tied to, but maybe had to think about in different ways to get to the point where we have a strategically aligned budget where we can look at the mandatory costs, the baseline costs, and those strategic investments that we're asking for this year. So what's included in the mandatory, baseline, and strategic budgets? So mandatory is really, the core of it is really those QBE funded positions and some of those, both for staffing and other spending. We've also looked at what are some of the things that are just required to keep buildings open, things like fuel to get kids to school, electricity. What are those sort of basic things that you need just to maintain operations? And then non-negotiable, a lot of these mandates that you may receive from the state, that they aren't funded, but still have to be done. Cell phone pouches being an example of that. Those are things that are included in the mandatory bucket. When we think about the baseline funding, I think it was the last quote from our previous presentation. If you do it 2 times, now it becomes something you do rather than an option or a choice. And so when we think about the baseline presentation, it's those things that we have historically done that have become more part of the experience rather than something that we're making a choice to do this year because it's elective or that we think we want to do it sort of strategically the way we're defining it here. So when we think about that, there's staffing in excess of QBE, so some of the art and other things like that that sort of round out the experience for students. Additional discretionary spending that sort of runs the gamut of things that can include, right? We think about the nurses and having 1 nurse per school. That's something that's not funding for QBE, like we talked about earlier today. That gets picked up in this baseline experience. Strategic is the net new investments. That's where we'll spend a lot of our time today. Our time collectively talking about, vetting, asking questions about, and really where we spent a lot of time, and I will say we, being the departments, thinking about how they will operationalize those to really enhance outcomes for students. So what we'll note is the baseline and strategic are both discretionary areas, but the baseline is really sort of the discretion that you've done historically to round out the experience, and the strategic are, again, those new investments that we're asking for this year. So we have this wonderful graphic that helps to illustrate sort of what QBE funds in that mandatory experience. And that's this experience over here. There's sort of a very basic class. You've got formula-funded basics, core classes, those basic classes only, limited operational support. There's no sports, there's no arts, there's no police department, and so it's this side. When we add in the local funding, we get the pom-poms and the school bus and the nurse and the additional teachers. The school itself, the facilities look different, right? And so when we really think about what we want for our students, it probably looks more like the picture on the left and the right. And so when we get to sort of rounding out the bones that we have on the right side, that's where the local funding comes in to provide, again, that holistic experience for the students of the district. Any questions on sort of what we've covered so far?
Do you think the visual, just to the board, the visual will help the public kind of understand what we learned this morning in terms of what QBE actually provides when the governor says fully funded education? He's not saying fully funded like the picture. Right. He's saying fully funded in terms of fully funding a 1985 formula. So this came actually from feedback from this group. I think Ms. Grabowski had often inquired about, is there a simple way that we can convey this message? So this was our attempt at doing that.
Yeah, I fully support it. And I know you made it with AI, and thank you for quoting that it's from AI, but when I see this is the new AI. That right side is just like the new, everything created by AI has that feel. I am now blind to it. I know there's some other slides in here that have the same, and it has the same feel. It has that same look, and I see that, and I scroll right past it. I do not look at it because I know
wow.
it's AI generated, and I'm fed up with AI generation. That's just me. We have artists. Crud, we got artists at schools that we could empower. So thank you for doing it, because I know you said you did it and you're not an artist, and it represents what I think we've asked for. It's just like, let's empower a person to do it and not a computer system and that might just be me.
Well, so
But-
can I'd love to have
Yeah.
a little bit of this discussion. I know it's not about budget, but we've had this same discussion. Dr. Taylor's pushed back on me, Kurt's pushed back on me. We are also under a significant time crunch to produce things often, right? So me spending 3 hours on this versus somebody spending 3 weeks on this, we would have gotten this probably after budget season had we waited. I do agree with you in cases where we can use authentic materials, but we have 4 people in our communications office. It would have taken, it would have taken months for me to get that.
Yeah, I get it fully.
I just want to
Yeah,
get, some
yeah.
things I just want to get done and get done.
I want it to be and this is not, we're supposed to be talking about budget, not like a picture.
But it's a good conversation.
Yeah. I think it's important enough moving forward, because it's going to be a continued story. It is a continued story. That's why it's been brought up
Right.
many times
We can
before you even
enhance
got
it.
here.
We can enhance
Like
it.
now that you have this, run with it this year.
But yes.
We've got people in the community that we've worked with, and be like, take this, flesh it out, because I can definitely see it not just being a static, but a moving
Yes.
comic or whatever. Take it to Savannah Arts, take it to the whole district, and be like, art teachers.
It just
We
takes
want,
time.
yeah, and
to
I
do
understand
that.
that, yes. And that's just me, I'm one,
Nope, I get it. I
and my
understand.
vote only counts
I love
a
it.
half.
I love it.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with having.
But I understand what you're saying also. For this
I
year.
understand. Right.
You know.
And just for efficiency of time, we can't always go to somebody because it takes a lot of time to sit with people. We spend a lot of time with SCAD and really months, weeks with SCAD on some things, and it just takes a long time.
You make the building on the left look like 1985.
Yes.
Again, it's just me.
You know, I
Yeah.
understand. Already had
I'm
this
just-
discussion internally,
Like,
so I
if
anticipate.
if your like flyer for your event looks like this, I scroll right past it, I ain't showing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's just me.
I get it.
You also have LPs and you don't stream music.
This is,
There's a balance,
there's a balance. Oh, no, and that's what I'm saying. I have an
He's
outlier
the
in most
outlier on the
things.
bell curve.
Yeah, yeah.
Ms. Campbell?
It doesn't bother me like it does Dr. Bremen, but but that's okay. I do. One thing that I am very cognizant of in seeing this is I totally see why we did it. I agree with the mentality and the sentiment. Like, we're showing that we're creating well-rounded young people and that we're giving them every opportunity. Totally accept that. What I think maybe gets a little overlooked is that the one on the left is education only focused. Again, not the ideal, but people, what I hear a lot is the community gets frustrated with these extravagant, opulent buildings that we build, whether it be tax dollars, which are East Blast as well, but East Blast specific dollars, or other dollars from the state, and our outcomes are increasingly concerning. So I don't know that I would necessarily push this as the like big win for us. in explaining why we want more.
Okay.
Ms. Hall?
One part of our educating the public now is to make them understand that school is not the school they went to. If you're 50 years old, the difference in your elementary school and high school experience is totally different from the children who we're dealing with today. Their needs are greater because they have less of a village to take care of the needs that we had taken care of by our parents, our churches, and other community investors in our lives. The schools have become, we are almost that total wraparound experience for so many of our children. So to look at the 1985 version, I'll just give an example. I didn't go to school here, but my husband did. He graduated from South C. Johnson. They were using books that were sent to them from the kids at Windsor Forest when they got through with them and discarded them. Those are the books that the kids at South C. Johnson got to learn from. So we have to take all of that, the experience of every taxpayer, the people who were here and went through Savannah, Chatham County public schools when it was not a system that we enjoy today. They want to see that a school experience for their children and grandchildren now is different from the one they experienced that was very stark and in many instances terrible. So I agree with you, Steph, that we need to not make our school experience look like it's an opulent situation. But compared to the schools that I saw across the South when I would come down to visit from the North, this is a huge step forward for education as far as I'm concerned, because the South of this country has always been considered the poor, the backwards, the non-progressive part of the country. Well, finally, Georgia is starting to look like it's a real place for people to come who want to be educated. So this is a big cultural discussion to have, and I don't want us to flit by this, because Dr. Watts, I think this is going to be very helpful for the public to understand the difference between what school was like then, what money was spent, and where we are now. And I really wish more people would enter this conversation, because to me it's very important.
Anyone else? Okay.
So when we think about sort of our first preliminary budget preview, the department request for FY27 totals $210.5 million. That's an increase of 8% over FY26, and that's the FY26 revised budget. So it includes all of the revisions that you all have approved to be made to the budget over the course of the fiscal year. The preliminary school budget allocation increased to $477.2 million, which is an increase of about 1%. And then before we get to some of the other core adjustments that we'll talk about later on in the presentation, that total is $687.7 million, which is an increase of 3%. One thing that you'll notice is kind of looking at this box that you don't see strategic under the schools. And so one of the things that we talked about is really, what happens, and some of the things that you'll hear about today, particularly the larger parts of these investments, are really sort of creating, enhancing and really driving transformational experiences at the school. So you'll hear more about that as part of particularly Dr. Barnes and Dr. Butler's presentations. Again, these are preliminary, so there is the opportunity that as we continue to refine these numbers through this discussion, through initial analysis, that they could change and be revised either upwards or downwards. So first we'll talk about the school budget allocation, which is pretty straightforward. There we go. when we look at what's in the mandatory column, so we talked about, and you'll see this sort of breakdown for each of the departments. So we have mandatory, baseline, and then the strategic investments. So for mandatory, we think about principals, teachers, again, some of those things that you have to have, basic supplies that are in the classroom to support kind of what the learning environment needs to be. There's about $391.6 million that's been identified as needs there. You'll see here the majority of that is in the salary and benefits line. When we think about the baseline for salary and benefits, there's about $84.3 million that's involved there. There's about $1.3 million that is sort of spread between baseline and strategic, and it's sort of those non-personnel items where the schools have more discretion on how they'll use them to sort of facilitate learning in the classrooms. And that total brings us to the $477.2 million that's been requested for FY27. So with that, before we get into the departments, we'll sort of shift to Dr. Taylor.
It's really low. Barely.
Good afternoon. Okay, there we go. Good afternoon. Thank you. You just heard the budget overview, and so I want to take a moment to connect how budget decisions are being made, specifically as it relates to how return on investment has evolved in our district. We started, as you recall, we started at the foundational level, and what you'll see on this slide is it kind of highlights where we started and where we are on our ROI journey. So we started at the foundational level, and we really focused on building the infrastructure so that we could launch our ROI work. As part of that, we developed a program inventory, which allowed us to begin to connect cost to impact. Another thing that we did as we were in our foundational work is we standardized how board requests came forward by introducing ROI metrics and justification. So you may recall now when you get a program request, there is ROI metrics already identified and associated with that, as well as a justification of what we anticipate the impact of that program to be. Also at this stage, one of the things that I really want to point out that was important as we built a very strong foundation is we had to create a shared understanding and visibility into not only ROI, but into what our investments are, and that's what the program inventory does, is allow everyone to see what's in our portfolio of programs that are being tracked. We are now moving into the strategic phase, and this is where we're kind of moving from shared understanding or the concept of ROI into using ROI to actively guide budget decisions. And what we've done as part of the strategic phase is that we've embedded ROI into our budget development. One of the things, as you hear from the chiefs, I want to point out is that all FY27 budget requests did require both evidence and justification of impact, of current impact if it's continuing, or anticipated impact if it's a new program that's being brought forward. Another thing that was really important, I remember when we had some of our initial conversations about our foundational work, I talked about building the muscle. Well, as we go into the strategic phase, we've been flexing our muscle, and as part of flexing and maintaining the muscle that we're building is we have launched a learning series, if you will, that's called Think Like an Investor. So every chief and program owner engages 3 times a year in Think Like an Investor training to help keep everyone sharp around what ROI work means. And then the other piece, and I think this is the most important part for me, is that we're acting on evidence. So as we're scaling things, adjusting or sunsetting programs, it's really based on the evidence of impact or anticipated impact. As it relates to what you'll see from your seat as a board member, hopefully you have seen, or you will continue to see, that ROI is embedded into budget decisions that we're making, and that evidence is tied to investment requests, and this whole thing around visibility into ROI throughout the year. So we're just not talking about ROI at budget season, we're talking about ROI throughout the year, and even bringing forward places in which ROI has led us to make middle of the year adjustments. And I am really excited. Sheena And Dr. Watts gave a shout out to the teams, but I would be remiss if I did not do that very same thing. The teams have been instrumental. The chiefs and program owners have worked extremely hard to get us where we are. And we are really moving from simply understanding ROI to implementing it into the way in which we work or operate. And so with that being said, what I'd like to do is transition and take a deeper look into the investments that we're tracking and talk a little bit about our portfolio performance. On this slide, what you'll see is our investment portfolio and how we're applying ROI and what it's beginning to surface. So at a high level, we're tracking 111 investments, and each have defined metrics and impact. Another thing that you may recall when we first started, we were getting this push around, is there more that you can do around ROI? We really want to know what the return on investment is, but you may recall one of the challenges for going deeper was that we did not have metrics or anticipated impact identified for many of our programs, but now all 111 of our programs, we have metrics that we're using to measure them, and we also know what the anticipated impact will be. Also, you'll notice in the portfolio that it represents a total of approximately 33 million. One of the things that I'll point out, or that you should note, is that for FY25, we looked at FY25 when I looked at the total portfolio because that's the most recent closed budget year. And that just gives us a complete and validated view of program investments across the system as we're currently in FY26. And so it's a little bit hard to look at things because some things are still in motion. Another thing that I want to shout us out for is across fiscal years, we've identified nearly 20 million in reductions. But I do want to pause here and add clarity around the term reduction in this instance. I do want to be clear that not all reductions represent underperformance. Reductions can reflect adjustments in scope, shifts in needs, or the completion of a major phase of work. So everything that's reduced does not mean something was sunset because it was underperforming. As you think about how we're really doing this work, there are three key considerations that are top of mind for every program investment, regardless of the area. And those things are strategic value, evidence of impact, and then financial stewardship and trade-off. What we are really noticing, if you look at the net sum of the portfolio, as part of applying our ROI work, we have 22 programs that are now flagged to be adjusted or stopped. That's important because instead of automatically renewing things, we are being very intentional about looking at programs that need to be adjusted in any way. There is also something that I want to point out around this notion of being deliberate and disciplined. No program is continuing by default. Every program is being looked at. And then I also want to point out, as you look at the data, 2 points for clarity. If something isn't rated, that typically reflects that it's a newer investment and the programs don't have sufficient data to fully assess its impact just yet. And when a program is identified as caution or adjust, that does not again automatically mean that it will be sunset, but what it signals to the team is that we need to take a closer look. There's a possible opportunity for redesign, refinement, and of course, if needed, sunset. Across the very bottom is just the portfolio distribution. So you'll see how our investments are distributed. Primarily, most of our investments are in IT and infrastructure, then literacy and digital resources. And this just simply helps really keep an eye on where we're spending or where we're investing the most as it relates to programs. So for me, what this slide really does is it reflects a shift from maintaining programs to actively managing our programs from an investor standpoint and taking a portfolio approach or a portfolio view. The next slide shows how our program inventory has changed over time. So you'll notice across FY25, FY26, and FY27, you're able to look at the total number of programs that were in the inventory, the number of programs that actually had reductions, and then the overall dollar impact. What's important here is that these programs reflect evidence-based decisions And this is where it's important to bring to life what I just mentioned about every reduction doesn't necessarily mean that it was because of underperformance. In some cases, reductions are tied to performance, but there are other cases that they reflect successful implementation or shift in need. For example, you'll notice Relay Leadership Coaching. This is a program that delivered on its intended outcome. We are beginning to build leadership capacity across the system, and so because of that, now we're able to reduce that investment because some of that work can be sustained internally. Another example would be audio enhancements. We made a significant investment to install audio enhancement systems across our schools, and now that installation is beginning to be complete, we're able to scale back on that investment. So again, reductions do not simply mean elimination. They reflect adjustments, completion, or opportunities for us to reallocate funds. I'll pause there to see if you have questions, reactions, or comments.
Ms. Hall.
And I'm one hitting for 3 o'clock, so let me hurry up. Time constraints. This means there's gonna be a lot of monitoring that didn't have to be done before, since nothing, I think you said no program continues by default. So where is the time coming from for the monitoring and the, you know, I mean, as a stockholder, you can sit and look at your phone all day, I guess, and see what's going up, but where will you get the time? And who in particular will be doing this monitoring of the programs so that you can tell us in the long run what's the evidence of their impact?
So the time is a shared responsibility of the chiefs and my team. So you may remember Dr. Heather Corbett. You met her. That is one of her primary responsibilities, and so she works directly with both the chiefs and the program owners. And what we are aiming to do as part of our natural cadence of reviewing performance data, that when we're reviewing our naturally reviewing our performance data, we're also bringing some of this data to the table. So we're not necessarily creating new spaces where folks are having to do extra work, but it's embedded into the data that we're also already using to inform practice throughout the system.
Ms. Grabowski.
Can you give on slide 16, I like the portfolio overview at the bottom. 2 questions. Do you have a similar graphic that shows how much is directly for students versus professional learning that kind of breaks it down in that way? And then the second question is, in this one, obviously over half is IT and infrastructure. And if these are programs, can you give an idea? And then you also have digital resources. So can you just give us an idea of how what would be included in that IT and infrastructure?
So IT and infrastructure, an example would be like RICO copiers. That would be IT infrastructure. Ed Tech digital resources, that would be like Brightspace,
Yeah.
MAP,
Okay.
those types of things. And I don't have the breakdown that you just asked for in front of me, but I can get it for you.
And you all, Sunday, in my update to you all got the entire,
Right.
Everything.
yeah, everything. So you can continue to use that as a reference as you make decisions.
So the IT and infrastructure then includes capital cost for,
It would, no, it doesn't.
I thought you just said
No.
copiers.
Well, we rent, we have a rental program.
Okay.
So not the actual
So it's not
copier
purchased.
itself.
Okay, okay.
It's evaluating that contract to make
contract.
sure it's
Right.
still delivering what we want it to.
Yes.
It's a service in many ways,
Yeah.
and we can evaluate it.
Right, not the machine itself.
Okay, thanks for clarification.
Okay, but I can also get a breakdown visually so you can see, because we do have a lot in PD and other places.
Thank you.
Dr. Howard Hall.
The adjustments for HMH into reading, is that a pivot from face-to-face professional development to online training? Does that have anything to do with a cost with that?
I'll say this and then Mr. Butler can chime in. It's not that it's pivoting from face-to-face to online, but you'll recall I just mentioned as we implement, we need less as time goes on. So some of the trainings that we needed initially in year 1, we don't need as we go forward because teachers have already received that set of training. Mr. Butler, is there anything you want to add to that?
And we can move to a train-to-trainer model.
Right.
Now
So
that
we
we
can
have
sus-
it internal.
Ms. Campbell?
So, I wanted to address something that Ms. Hall said earlier about that we're the sole wraparound and things like that. One thing I worry about when I look at added increases just at baseline is how well are we doing the things that we're doing now? And where do our priorities lie? Do we have priorities? Because like even in our home lives, we can't take on the responsibility of everything we want to do. We have to prioritize things in order to get the best bang for our buck and what we think is the most important. So that's number one. All the wraparound services and stuff, I think it's great that we speak to offering them, but I hope that we really do deliver them if we speak to them so much and pay for them. Number two, I do worry I love the ROI. I think everyone can agree. I've been a huge champion of this. I love what Dr. Taylor has done here. I am a little concerned. At the retreat, I said we're only looking at 15% of our budget analytically because 85% is people. And as I went through this, I realized, no, we're looking at 5% analytically. So that means that 95% of our budget then is just getting layered on top of. So if we're trying to, if we take dollars out of it completely and pretend like it's not a monetary budget, right? We're just budgeting time and the ability to help children in need. Are we prioritizing that well? If we had a system that was bad, meaning we had balanced literacy, in theory, people, including me, would think, well, take all of that failed children for so long, throw it out, and then bring in all of this new stuff that we're going to implement and give a true either trade-off or discount, right, for what we were doing prior that wasn't working. That's not real because, as we just heard, there are myriad influences as to why we increase our spending every year. But doubling the cost per student over 10 years is not just because of EIP and IEP, right? I mean, there's no way.
Sure. It's
So
not just that.
right. So there is something there that's an inefficiency that is making it difficult for us to be more strategic and hold people accountable where there's ownership for tasks where they get done successfully. I love this ROI framework. I wish we could do a system-based ROI.
I think that is what A&M was referring to a few slides up when they said things that are under exploration and future opportunities. You are correct. We have only scratched the surface with these things, right? There are deeper dives that have to be done around staffing, contracts, all of that has to be done. And that is what that was the purpose of that slide, to say this is where we have to go in the future as we continue to look at enrollment drops, federal uncertainty, changes in law, legislation here, and we anticipate that that's going to have a negative. We're going to have less revenue, so we have to do those things. But this is just where we are today. In March, you can't start a staffing conversation about reducing staffing.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is that we took on A&M to help make our budget more transparent and to hopefully save us money and cause us to have better efficiency in the future with a better budgetary system, right? Model.
Yes. Absolutely.
But and with a new strategic plan rolling out for 5 years, right, that you have worked very diligently and well on. I mean, the way that you went about it was fantastic. But it feels like we never really voted on what our baseline experience should be or what we do expect, like nurses in every schools, SROs in every schools, et cetera. We're just sort of assuming it still, which is a trade-off, right? We're giving up something to have
It's
that,
discretionary.
even though it's not an
as she
education.
mentioned, it's discretionary.
So I guess I would expect with a new strategic plan rolling out in 5 years, a major overhaul with A&M coming in and helping us with our budget, that we would then, scale the change in our budget to match the seriousness of the outcomes we've had. It needs to be similar, in my opinion. Like, we have really concerning outcomes that haven't gotten better. We need to do something drastic. So I don't know that spending money thus far hasn't made that better.
Understood.
Dr. Howard Hall.
Just sitting here thinking as far as a mandatory expense includes an internal audit that wasn't listed up there. So are you all working with our internal auditors to assist with this process? Because they tend to, to find findings of things that's working and things that's not.
So we will, internal audit, their slide is in the appendix, I think, for this one, but the internal audits are part of that mandatory work. We've had some conversations with sort of audit about things that are working or not working generally across our entire scope, not just in the budget process. But one of the things that I'll say is that I think when we think about sort of the department level budgets, it's really sort of driven by the sort of the expertise and the knowledge of that chief in terms of what their department needs. They're definitely, Dr. Watts pushed back on us, we pushed back on her, we pushed back on the chiefs to kind of think about like what's really driving that. So it comes more from, I think, the chiefs than it does sort of, I would say, we looked at sort of the independent audits and said, you shouldn't be doing this or that. We sort of gave some input to that, but I wouldn't say that that was kind of a determining factor in terms of whether we allow them, allow is not the right word, but whether we sort of move forward with a change or not.
It didn't drive decision-making on any of these things. However, our internal audit team does support us in maybe finding efficiencies that can reduce cost. But it wasn't a driving factor into any of these things.
So, Ms. Hall, so what we are called to do is we're called to have the tough conversations and going on what Ms. Campbell is talking about, and this is very uncomfortable, but if 85 to 90% of our budget is our positions and our people, are we doing the ROI on that 90%?
No. We have not gotten to that place yet. We have not gotten to a place where we've looked at significant, and I think when I hear Ms. Campbell speak, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, that's what I feel like I'm hearing you, the translation of what you're saying, is that the only way to get to the transformation in our budget that you desire, we can only cut people, because really that's the place that that's where the money is.
I would boldly say that. I have.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was translating it
It's not
correctly.
about cutting people. It's about efficiency. It's like I said, it is about money. I mean, it is, because asking more and more and more all the time and getting more and more, at some point, it's going to dry up. I mean, it's got to, because we, at this rate, we're just, we've outpaced inflation by 200% in 10 years. So, but really it's about efficiency, because if you have layers upon layers upon layers of people that are all overseeing the next layer, who's really the one who's responsible for implementing the plan, maintaining the plan, and being held accountable if the plan doesn't work? Again, not to cut them or fire them, but to say, that didn't work, what are we gonna do now? You're responsible for the next set of the plan because the first plan didn't work, right? It's about having that efficiency.
But that wouldn't change having that conversation that you just highlighted doesn't change the financial implication.
Which would be great.
Unless you change the number of people, that's the only way to do it.
So,
Go ahead.
I think I'm hearing some of it. You're getting to holding people accountable all the way down, and we're working towards distilling that. The conversation would be, keep the budget the same. if all of our scores were going up.
Right.
If we were actually making a meaningful difference year over year, or at least incrementally after a couple years. And I know, I believe, one board member again, I believe we're on the right path. We're still in that doldrum where it's a little difficult to say, okay, one more time I'm gonna hit go on raising the budget, even though our scores went down. So if our scores were going up, budget. The people are doing what they're supposed to do at all levels. But right now, if we think the return on investment of all of our programming is correct, then the implementation is where our problem is. Once that implementation and everybody's held accountable to this, and I think, I hear it in meetings that you're saying, yeah, everybody's been getting a step because everybody's been satisfactory every year. And we're getting better moving forward at holding everybody accountable to a level they know at all levels in the district. It just can't all happen overnight because there's so many moving pieces. I get that, but I don't think we'd have the same budget conversation every year if we weren't on state lists.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And you'll see some things later in the presentation that hopefully will help us get to the scores. But what you just offered, again, because we're talking about the desire that I'm hearing from both of you, or maybe just Ms. Campbell probably more, is a desire to reduce the budget.
I think at minimum, we should be keeping the budget.
Or at least keep it
relatively
neutral, right?
neutral.
So to reduce the budget, because I've done so many of these things already, right, that I've cut programs, the only other place to go is people. Because I still have to account for rising costs of fuel. So before we do anything, if we just kept the budget from last year and rolled over, and A&M, maybe you can help me, there would automatically be an increase. Just because of the sheer fact that we have to pay for now turf to be maintained. We have to pay now for their TRS increases.
Which compound every
Pouches
year
for-
even higher.
Right.
Because we want to retain people, but retaining them means that they're increasing in step. Now potentially a designated COLA every year.
So again, you're
and
going
merit
back to
pay.
people. The only way for me to get to the impact that you're talking to is to begin to have conversations about adequate staff. Do we have surplus or adequate? And it does tie into the accountability piece, because that's what that's how we should be making those decisions.
And with Munis optimization, like when we talk about optimizing AI, and then we would have better efficiency, have we optimized? Like, have we become more efficient in certain departments and things now that we have Munis? Cross-talking?
You'll see later that we're getting to that. There's gonna be mixed feelings about that. I thought I was being efficient by creating a graphic from AI. It was 5 hours of my time, working till 9 o'clock one night doing it. But you have a different opinion that now time should be invested in going to sit with a partner and explaining to a partner what we want, and then having that partner come back with 5 iterations of what we want, and then going back and saying, no, not this one, but this one. No, I did it in 3 hours sitting at my desk. So it's mixed. I get mixed cues, I guess.
Ms. Hall.
Okay, Mr. Henniger, you probably have been here longer than me. I've been here 14 years. When is the last time we had $20 million in reductions?
Yeah, it's been, I can't remember a reduction that large as long as I've been with the district.
Okay.
And I think part of the narrative that's so important to remember is it's not as easy just to say in a blanket statement you're layering on top of the budget every year, because what happens is you're really rolling forward that investment of that baseline that has been committed to with input from boards of educations for years. Take nurses, for example. Nurses, 60 nurses in this school district, 1 in every single school. We don't have to do that. but a previous board and administration felt that was important to invest into the livelihood of our schools. So that continues to be a part of our baseline experience in the budget. So when you start from that as a starting point, and then when you do add on the cost of operation, which is greater today than it was 10 years ago, of course your budgets are going to naturally go right out of the gate. Now, you'll hear today a lot of discussion as we get further in the presentation about some of the investments that we're looking to do and the rationale and the case for support as to why the board would support them when it comes to the final budget adoption, which is not until June, so a lot can happen between now and June, first and foremost. But you'll see that rationale as how that will result in student outcomes. But to your point, Ms. Hall Direct, when you talk about the cost of doing business and the staffing models that we have, which are really in true line a commitment of our baseline experience in Savannah Chatham Public Schools, which has been committed to by previous administration and previous boards, yes, there's a natural, at the beginning of a budget growth, a certain amount that is going to be higher than it was in a previous year.
Okay, so what I'm saying is this is the first time in your memory, as in mine, that we've been able to achieve $20 million in reductions. Okay, the second thing is, when's the last time we had just a 5% increase? And I say all this to say, the gentleman this morning showed that slide where the guy was saying, we all expect our children to have not necessarily better lives, but at least lives as productive as ours or better. So if that's the case, then a 5% increase in a budget and $20 million in reductions seems that we're on the right path. Okay, yeah, good, Denise. Somebody talk. I'd like to hear what somebody else thinks.
Well, I just think that
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I mean, our budget is a big number, and to speak to only that number misses the incredibly important nuances that fall within that number, which is what the whole rest of this day is supposed to be about. So I think we have to go into that nuanced discussion. And I was trying to think of some sort of an analogy, and it's probably not a great one, but when you think about like economic development, if a community lands a new company that has, 500 new jobs, like it is celebrated from the rooftops, everybody hears about it, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have 50 small businesses that each have 10 employees, you still have 500 new jobs, but you don't hear about it because it's incremental. But it still is just as impactful, and in many ways even more so, because those are local businesses that really are more stable because you have more of them instead of just the one. So I think it has to be that more nuanced conversation that the rest of this presentation, I think, is gearing us up for that type of a more complex discussion. Generally, I think a 5% budget increase, considering the cost of all the things, is not unreasonable at all, in my opinion. But I do think
There's been other cuts. This is just the things that are in our program inventory, so it's
Right.
actually more than 19 million.
right. So,
Yes.
but I guess the point is, like, to me, it's a much more nuanced conversation because we are seeing gains in some places, we're seeing challenges in others. But anyways, that's my point.
I do agree with you, Ms. Campbell, that we have not defined baseline experience. So what resonated with me and how we kind of came to that was something that Mr. Cashmar said at our retreat, in that the baseline experience, and I won't say it exactly the way you said it, Mr. Cashmar, but the way I interpreted it was, if we've included it year over year by virtue of policy, or continued to push it through our budget, i.e. nurses, police officers, then it is our baseline experience. But maybe I didn't think about that the right way. Maybe we should have had more conversations and defined it.
And
as
I'll
a
even
team.
say, I think between Kurt and Dr. Watts, he probably had we all pushed back on each other
Yes.
about what was included in each of these categories. And as we go through, particularly some of the larger department budgets in the few more slides, you'll kind of see how we broke out mandatory and baseline. And
Maybe we should have
challenge
brought it
them,
back.
right? I think
I'd
that's
love
the
for you to
opportunity.
challenge it.
Yeah, to say like, you know what, we're picking on the poor nurses, but like, we need a
Right.
nurse for every 3 schools and not 1-to-1, right? Like,
Right.
I think
Yeah.
those are the types of things that, in a workshop environment, I think are
We need to
fair game
discuss.
to talk about.
Ms. Campbell?
Yeah, I guess, are we, how is this different than a spend growth model if you, in 3 years, have cut 3% of the overall budget? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going back to the audit when I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, so I think different from what we have done historically, like if I was just thinking about an incremental budget, I wouldn't have gone line by line through the chiefs wouldn't have gone line by line through their budget, cutting certain things, increasing certain things. You would just add 1-2% to everything and kind of roll things forward, right? And so that was a very different exercise from what has happened here, even though you're still seeing increases. Some of those increases are not necessarily just 1% over what was expended or X% over what was expended, right? Some of those are new strategic initiatives, right? Some of those are maybe a doubling of what was spent before because of X or Y, and some of them are gonna be reductions, right? But that was sort of a line by line, sort of looking at each account decision, rather than just adding the average costs of increase over time.
Mr. Catchmark?
When Dr. Watts first came in, we started talking about these issues and talking about ROI, and we were like, okay, let's do it next month. And the response was, I can do it next month, but it'll be taking a blunt hatchet to whatever the district is. Let me be smart about it. And what we're seeing 12, 18 months later is a smarter, not smarter, but a thoughtful, data-driven, incremental approach to ROI, where part of me is like, let's just cut 30 million and say, figure it out now. But we're also telling Dr. Watts, at the same time, get us off the watch list, increase our scores, give us more transportation, and at the end of the day, you need people to execute. We're not at a point yet where we can identify what do we really need to execute and what is excess, right? So I was thinking about this in the context of like what I do for a living, which is help companies look at labor costs, do reductions in force, right-size their staffing, and a client will call and say, okay, we need to reduce our budget. And I'm like, great, how do you want to do that? Well, 70% of our budget is people. Okay, well, I can help you do that. What's your business strategy for doing it? And some of them are like, well, I don't have one. Or I just want to cut people who make the most money, because that's where I can get the most savings on a one-for-one basis, right? So then I tell them, well, we could do that, but then to meet fairness requirements, you have to cut everybody based on the same criteria. So if you want to cut everybody making over $150,000 a year, that's fine. You're going to lose a lot of your best performers. And then you're going to lose people at the lower levels who were striving to reach the higher levels, because this is not a stable place to work anymore, and I need more security. So we come to a more nuanced process where there's performance and accountability. There's also an analysis of what's needed next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. There's a reason none of us have telephone operators in any of our businesses anymore, right? But that used to be the #1 job in America in the 30s. So technology will come into play. I'm working on something for a client right now where they brought in some software, they're going to reduce about 11 positions. So what I see here is a process where we're trying to identify programs, and once we start cutting programs, I think we can start identifying positions, and the humane way to approach it in the short term, in my mind, is attrition first. Then we get to a point 2, 3, 4 years down the road where we now have an accountability model, we have an assessment model, not just for 208, but for schools, and we can identify, here are the performance criteria we actually think have the best ROI on what we've invested in. Then we have a model where we can select the bottom 10 or 15% and start making reductions. But what I'm concerned about now is I talk to teachers all the time who are like, I'm a great teacher, there's an awful teacher next door, and there's no meaningful differentiation from recognition, pay, promotional opportunities, professional development, and it's not fair. And if we just go into a school and say, cut your low performers, without identifying what we as a district think the criteria are, where we have a national teacher shortage and a Georgia teacher shortage, I'm just concerned about doing it too quickly. But that all said, I'm 100% in alignment that our numbers are going down, our enrollment's down, we have inflationary costs, we have to be better at staffing, but maybe what we need to do as a board is say, here's what our 2, 3, and 5-year goals are. Flat budget, 4% budget, 6% reduction budget, a combination of programs and staffing. And part of that, we need to know what our retirement window looks like over the short term and long term. How many positions are eligible for retirement? What does that look like? What does our staffing look like? If most of our people are young, then we know we're going to have a really heavy growth in salary over the next 20 years. But if most of our folks are trending older, we can lose a lot of positions from attrition and not get the reputation of a district that's just cutting people. So I guess I'm saying all this to say, I like the path we're on. I don't think we're at a place yet where we can just start saying we need to reduce headcount by 17%, because I don't think we have all the data and the analytics to get there yet. But I'd like to get there in the next 3 years or 2 years. And maybe we as a board, if a majority of the board says, we want to right-size our staff, we want to figure out where our staffing is, and using our ROI metrics, we know that's 85% of our budget, so the best way to save the most money is to focus on that. But here's the plan that we want to execute, which is kind of what we did with the programming side of things. So I'm impatient too, but I also don't want to do it wrong or haphazardly, if that makes sense. And I don't know where that balance is. I do think we're a couple years out for me being able to meaningfully say we can identify our 5% lowest performers based on performance and based on our programming, and start making some hard decisions there. But I don't know if we can do it right now.
We can't. Because it would all be based on evaluations, and our evaluation system is not. It's not a good differentiator of performance right now.
Continue, I'm sorry.
Okay, that was robust.
There's more to come.
I just want to skip past this slide altogether. Dr. Bream, just turn to the wall. You drew that? Okay.
I drew that for Dr.
So
Wells.
I'll just do a quick overview of this, because this was really our effort to tell a story that in a visual could capture what we are attempting to convey in our strategic plan. So our goal, kind of starting from the bottom and headed to the top, we want to create for every student a future-ready experience so that they can lead a choice-filled life. And in order to do that, our strategic plan will really be lifting up that baseline experience that we want for every student, every school, every day. And we've highlighted what those things are: rigorous learning, ownership and voice, belonging and joy, timely, personalized support, and high-impact pathways and signature experiences. So when we speak to what we want for every child every day, those are the things. Now, to your point, Ms. Campbell, how that gets operationalized, the people, the programs, what that looks like costs money, right? And how we define below that, how we manifest those things, that's what's up for debate. But conceptually, that's what we want for every student, every child, every day. In order to do that, as a district, we want to focus on academic excellence, world-class talent, engagement and partnerships, and operational excellence and accountability. Our theory of action is that if we do those 4 pillars really well, we will be able to provide that experience. And then as you go further up the slide, I don't want to lose sight of the importance of culture. I've had people push back on my team about the heart, so this will be refined. Culture is not just about love. Culture is also about what I really want our culture to be, is a performance culture, where we do have metrics of accountability, but we also have joy, and we also have a sense of belonging, not only for our students, but also for our staff. So there's a lot wrapped in that heart. But you also see in that ribbon this concept of innovation, which speaks to some of the things that have already been mentioned on this side of the table. As emerging technology comes into play, we can take advantage of those things and perhaps create efficiencies or be able to look at staffing in new and different ways. And then leadership capacity is important. None of this gets done without people. None of it gets done without people. So we have to have the leadership capacity and competency in our district to execute with fidelity. And in general, if you look at all these things in together in a comprehensive way, we believe that is going to result in unlimited possibilities for our students, and helping them reach that future ready status. So this is our entire strategic plan in one visual. It was an attempt. It will not be the final thing that you see. But again, I needed to get it done. We wanted the concept. It started with a scratch on a whiteboard. That's how it started, and this is what it evolved to. But hopefully that helps convey what we want our strategic plan to represent. If you'll go to the next slide, we are ready now to begin to move into more of the strategic investments. And I will this is our first pillar. This is the pillar that really focuses on academic achievement. It's what is happening in our schools, in our classrooms every day, for every child. It speaks to, obviously, we want to accelerate performance so that we get off lists around literacy and numeracy. But it goes beyond that. And if you saw my fireside chat, when I picked up my children from school every day, I just did not ask them about a test score. My children were more than a test score, and I believe most parents feel like, while we think the test score is important, it is, but really what parents care about is that their kids have a good experience. And that experience is that students feel seen, heard, they're engaged, they're having these other experiential things that will help them truly be a well-rounded child and adult. So that is built into this piece of the strategic plan. You're going to hear a little bit about how we plan to get off the list, and that is our differentiated support model. And obviously, we don't want to leave out, in order for all this to happen, we have to Maslow before we bloom. So we have to have for students a sense of safety, a sense of support, a sense of belonging. Kids won't learn if they don't feel those things. That's not just my opinion, that's actually scientifically proven, right? Kids have to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of safety, so that they can learn, and that's what 1.6 really tries to capture. So that's our first pillar, and we'll go, I'll turn it back over to A&M to kind of go into the budget implications around that.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Watts. So now what you all are going to see is a series of slides that will start out with a sort of department overview. And then within each department, we'll hand off to the department chief to talk about some of their different strategic initiatives, meaning the net new things that they hope to do this upcoming fiscal year to drive towards that strategic plan that Dr. Watts just outlined. And so to start, we're going to start with the Office of School Leadership and Dr. Barnes. But before I hand it to him, just really quickly, I want to just walk you through sort of some of the baseline numbers versus the mandatory numbers, and then we'll let him kind of speak through the strategic initiatives themselves. But to start in the far left column, you see the mandatory amount. And so, these is where we think about sort of what has to be done, right? And I won't belabor the point because we've defined it a few times over the past few months. But for the Office of School Leadership, this includes things such as their QBE funded positions, school administration oversight, and then some of the utilities costs that come with the rentals of athletic facilities. In terms of baseline, that's where we see a lot of the expenditures for all of our athletic programs, whether it's athletic leadership positions, coaching supplements, just the cost to run athletic programs across the district, as well as costs for graduations, field trips for students, and then any other administrative positions that are held within the Office of School Leadership. And so in total, that's about $5.5 million for those baseline costs. Now we have another $6.5 million in new strategic investment. So the brand new things, the brand new initiatives that are going to help drive that strategic plan that we hope to kick off in FY27. And so with that, I'll pass to Dr. Barnes, who will go through in detail some of those items.
Good afternoon. Oh my gracious, how you doing? We're gonna talk about some good stuff on the next ever how many slides, because it's about students and doing great things for students over the next 5 years. So what I'm presenting today is about our transformation efforts for a subset of schools in our school district, which is 12 schools. And so the first set of slides are directed specifically for that strategy, and then there are some slides that I will talk about just holistically that will be impacting all schools. So this is not a short cycle initiative. What we're asking is to make a 5-year phase commitment, and that every budget decision in this presentation follows that long arc over 5 years. The operating framework rests on 3 connected elements. So our pillars that are within our strategic plan, but also the pillars of excellence that we're looking at for schools. Our core leadership team, which are central office folk, and also our 4 strategic levers around systems leadership and support and accountability. And we had a lot of conversation around that earlier today around accountability. Also our instructional framework and our talent management strategy of how do we retain highly effective leaders and teachers in our schools. So right now we're currently in our baseline year of 25-26, and that is establishing a foundation in which we want to measure our growth. Year 1 is not the culmination year, it is the starting point. So this upcoming budget request is the first significant investment in a multi-year opportunity to improve the lives of students. This phasing matters financially because you're being asked to fund a fully scaled system today. You're not just being asked to fund individual things. A standalone figure without the context underestimates the total commitment, and it understates the actual discipline that is built into a phased approach of improving schools over a long period of time. So our core theory of change, it is very explicit, and in this particular case, it is situating us to say if the district implements 4 foundational levers, schools will be able to develop the capacity to sustain excellence and to produce student achievement. This model that we are presenting is a conditions first model. It is important that as a district, we invest in the conditions that enables schools to succeed. It is not just what happens in the classroom, but it's what we do as a district that supports the schools and for schools to be able to elevate the classrooms. From a fiscal standpoint, this means that you are investing in an organizational infrastructure for our schools and not just programs. So how do we get here? And I'm gonna turn this a little bit. So how did we get here? we just didn't choose schools arbitrarily. Schools were identified using a weighted risk formula. And what were we weighing out? We had 70% of that formula was dedicated to CCRPI, 20% to reading on grade level, and 10% of that formula with weighted suspension rate. We also included our federal identifications for schools that were on our CSI, ATSI, and our TSI lists with additional risk from an inverse standpoint. Students who fell within that quartile, schools that fell within that quartile, based off our formula, were designated to be our transformational schools. This is not a subjective list. It is data-driven, it's defensible methodology, and it means that as a district, we can stand behind the investments with confidence because we have measurable outcomes that we can trace. Additionally, investing in these schools is not a district priority. In some cases, it's a compliance requirement with fiscal consequences if we don't address them as time passes. So we have 12 schools that fell on that list. And those schools, as you see. This is a targeted, concentrated strategy, and we're focusing on our elementary, our K-8, and middle schools. We're choosing not to focus in on high schools at this moment, not because the need is not there, and we will continue to support them through additional efforts, but we believe that if we can strengthen the foundation over the next 5 years in these schools, it's going to have lasting impacts into the feeder schools in which these elementaries feed into, in which our middle schools feed into high schools. The investment today is not about just investing in these for this short period of time, but it's about going deeper into these schools so that we can really address foundational and root cause in concentrated efforts. So our timeline of progression, years 1 and 2, it represents our maximum district investment and our maximum oversight. This is where we have really intense coaching, assessments, professional learning, and embedded support. Year 3, we start transitioning to a gradual release, and this is where schools start taking on more of their decision making while the district still continues to maintain our cadence of monitoring effectiveness and outcomes. Years 4 and 5 is where we focus on the sustainability phase, and we are operating at or above the district average. These schools become incubators or where others can learn from and from the things that we have invested in from this framework. The question always comes, well, how do you get out of this? Once these schools start, they're in for 5 years. The exit ramp is built into this design. This is not like a subsidy model. It is time limited, time bound, and it's time intensive. And so as we invest in it intensely today, over 5 years, we should see a declining cost while raising student achievement. So what are we investing in for year 1 and year 2? The key investments in these 2 years include instructional leadership coaching, leadership recruitment and retention bonuses, competency-based staff selection, family and community engagement, a tiered performance bonus structure, high dosage tutoring, and professional, a paraprofessional small group strategy, and leadership development pathways. So I want to pause here to answer any questions about the overview of what the transformational strategy looks like.
So I remember a very similar presentation at our fall retreat.
Yes.
Which I just pulled up because I was very excited about it then. I'm still excited about it, but I definitely have some questions because it was, and maybe I misunderstood or I'm not remembering correctly, thought that we were starting with the schools that were identified in the fall retreat, which is different, and that we were starting that this year. And that list is different than the list we're seeing here.
Shouldn't be drastically different.
So we lost from fall of 2025, that list included Gadsden and Hodge, which are not on the current list. And it also included Beach and Groves, which are not on the current list. So I would love to understand kind of what happened with the schools, like, help me explain that change.
He can.
Yes, so that's a great question, and so as you remember, during that retreat, I presented that this is our 0 year, our piloting year to see, like, if we were to throw spaghetti on the wall, what really works. And so the schools that were identified, we went by the best data that we had at that moment.
Okay.
Well, since that time, we have chosen to narrow down to drop high schools also. That's why Groves and Beach are no longer on the list. However, you see the change with Hodge and Gaston. So the most relevant data we had at the time we used, but once new CCRPI data came out and we looked at the weighted suspension rate and we put in a weighted formula that I shared earlier, those schools actually fell off the list because of that weighted formula. Once we applied more numerical data points that's in a weighted system, not just looking at, okay, these are just struggling schools, other new schools emerged as a result of that.
Okay, so you reevaluated the criteria.
Right.
And then assuming that the budget request that's associated with this moves forward, would next school year be year 1, or is that still year 0?
So next school year becomes year 1, because
Okay.
this is our baseline year. So of all the things that we invested in, as you remember at that time, it was a $750,000 investment. And we also leveraged funds from other funding sources to also pilot other initiatives. The learning from that this year set the foundation for the budgetary ask of this year. And so we do have positive data as a result of those initiatives that we invested in off that $750,000 investment from the last budget cycle. So now we're beginning to scale that across these schools and go deeper with those initiatives.
So the schools that were on the list before and are on the list now, are they kind of like at 0.5 since you've already started working with them, or are they kind of all just starting? Sorry, I don't mean, but just trying to understand the evolution of this process.
So they benefited from year 0.
Okay.
The ones that were on the list and will remain on the list.
Okay.
And I think that's why we're counting next year as year 1, because this was more of an exploration year. Let's pilot some things, let's see what works. They benefited from those things, and so it would be difficult for me to say this year, that next year is year 0, because they already had a
Right.
dosage of many of the things that, so they already got an initial dosage. Next year, we will intensify that dosage, now that we've explored and we've seen what works, and the data has yielded the specific schools we should be focused on. So that's why this year was a year 0, next year's a year 1.
Okay, and I think going forward, understanding how these strategies and what like being able to be a little bit more specific about how those strategies are advancing us towards our goal, especially if this is
Sure.
something we're gonna expand to other schools, would be
Yes,
helpful.
absolutely.
Dr. Brinkman?
Yeah. So are these schools aren't gonna come off this list then? Cause see, I
For
thought.
5 years. For 5 years, they will not.
Okay, but the other ones did.
They did
'Cause
because
we were
we
at 0?
remember, when we did it the first time in September, we did not have data.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of data. We were just going on previous data. It was not put in any kind of formula. It was
Okay.
just look at some data, and these
That
are the
was your-
schools that have been struggling. Now we have a true formula, and these are the schools.
And no matter what, they could rock it. We're gonna still keep pouring into them.
Well, you'll see in just a minute. It'll be intensive years 1 and 2. Year 3 will start gradually releasing, because in my experience, and that's all I've done in my whole life is turnaround work,
Yeah.
right? What we do is we go into a school, we put a lot of effort into it, and as soon as the school has a pop, the district goes, they're good, and then they leave, and then the school goes right back down, right? And, or the leader changes, and then all of a sudden the school's right back where it was. And that's why I don't like the language turnaround, because what happens is it turns around, and it turns around, and it turns around, and the turning never stops, just a circle. So the goal here is to have year 1 and 2 intensive, year 3 begin to gradually pull things back. Hope by then, you'll see here, that we are at a point where it can begin to sustain itself. We've worked with the principals, we did this work in Charlotte. Their Title I money begins to go to things that we had been paying for before, but now they begin to pay for out of their own funds. But this first couple of years is, yes, it's a lot being poured in, and no, they do not come out until year 5.
So would you say that we prematurely classified these schools?
I wouldn't say prematurely, because to me, when you say premature, there's like a lack of intentionality. And I think we did have intentionality. But what I wasn't willing to do was to wait a year while we did all this planning in the background and then let next year be the starting year. Because there were kids in all of these schools, even the ones that came off the list, they needed the help this year. So it wasn't premature in my opinion.
No, so it's not premature. In some cases, if the cut was at 40, some of these schools could have been at 41 or 42. So it's not like there is a differential between some of the schools that,
so
significant
wide,
differential
right.
between the schools that may have fallen off and got replaced. It's just that wherever that line is cut, it's just somebody's above and somebody's below. But some of the schools, at any given moment, any blink of an eye, test score can go up 1 or 2%, one or more, 2 kids can get suspended, and all of a sudden they all back in the same boat.
Ms. Hall?
Yes, I'm sure, I'm very happy. Whatever advantages came from this year certainly will help them. And that school is definitely one, with a blink of an eye, could fall
one way or
down.
the other,
But,
right.
so I'm very happy for whatever progress they made that got them above the line. But could you run over the formula again? You said 70% CCRPI. How much is reading on grade level?
20%.
20%, and suspension rates then were?
10%.
10, okay.
And I will speak to Gaston. So in terms of Gaston, and this is the same thing with all the other schools that receive supports. Once you develop a person, they don't lose those skills. So investing in the development of a leader, investment in development of teachers, they don't lose the skill, even though they're not on our list. They still have that skill to continue to move forward. So some of the data that we've seen at Gaston, they are really doing a phenomenal job with the things that we have already implemented there. What that has set Gaston up to do is to say, this has benefited me as a leader, it has benefited my students and my teachers. I now feel more confident of using my Title I dollars to also do a school-based contract where I can continue some of these same strategies. That doesn't stop us from supporting Gaston, because the coaching framework that we invested in is the
Still
district
keep doing
coaches
it.
framework. We're just gonna continue to go deeper with it with some of the identified schools. So really nothing has been taken away from them. Even when I talk about the high dosage tutoring, we piloted in those targeted schools. But once we expand high dosage tutoring across the entire district, all the students who fall within that percentile, no matter where they are in the district, they still gonna receive
High
that same
dosage
support.
tutoring, right.
So nobody's really losing, even though they're not on this list, they're not losing from a development standpoint.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, I've been attending the forums, candidate forums. Mr. Moss, I know you've been, and been in the hot seat for so many times. The director of Family Promise, she's the CEO of Family Promise, asked a question regarding homeless students, because as a district, we typically depend on McKinney-Vento to take care of those responsibilities. So her question was, what are we doing as a district? Or have we considered doing anything as a district in addition to what they're receiving from the federal grant, the McKinney-Vento grant? Because we know that right now, with everything going the way it is, we more than likely have an increase with the homeless students. So I just thought you might not be able to answer it right now, but since that came up, I thought I would bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Mr. Butler, you wanna?
Yeah, so I certainly here in just a moment, I'll share one of the strategic investments that sort of acknowledge our intentional support of schools, particularly schools where we see a higher population of homeless students. But that is essentially a part of our comprehensive wraparound supports based on school needs.
Ms. Grabowski?
Just a quick follow-up. How do the schools that we're providing this focus, how do those schools compare to our, I'm trying to talk to the mic. Okay, sorry. The list that you have in the presentation, how does that list compare to our target, or 25%? Yeah, yes. Are they all also on the Georgia Promise list, I would presume?
Yeah, so that was one of the requirements. They show up either on a federal or state, local list.
Okay, sorry, I missed that part. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
Kind of along the lines of what Mr. Smith was saying is the schools that, again, to our outcomes, I know at any point in any test grade, can alter the status of these schools, right? Especially the 18. So what happens, I love the 5 years. I love we're not taking them off. I'm here for that. I think the continuity is good, waiting until something works or doesn't, not just ripping it out. But are we disenfranchising schools that were on the list prior or that could be on the list in the future, but now they haven't made the cut in this year's budget or 5-year plan, and therefore they're left to their own devices and whatever we can offer them because these are our chosen schools? Does that make sense?
It does
It
make
does
sense,
make
but it's
perfect
not
sense.
that black and white. It's
Nope.
not.
I
that-
assume not. I wanted to hear
yeah,
it.
It's
I
not,
just-
it's not that black and white. So what we invested in last year was leadership coaching for principals, leadership coaching for their academic coaches. We invested in a platform to track and monitor those action steps to develop either teacher development or leadership actions. We invested in high dosage tutoring. Those are the things we invested in. Because those things build a skill within you, so you're not left out in the woods now that you no longer have them. While we built that muscle memory in principals, simultaneously the people who sit in the back here, the principal supervisors, we built the muscle memory in them, so they still continue to receive some level of support. It wasn't a material thing that we gave them and now we're taking that material thing back. We actually built capacity within people. So an investment in people is the best investment. So even 5 years from now, when these schools and kids get better, a new cohort of students come. But if the same teachers are in the building, the same principals in the building, even though we may remove the money after 5 years, the capacity is still there for sustainability in the years to come. So it's not, one or the other. It's based off what we chose to invest in. Now, if I chose to use that money to just buy computers,
Right.
we know that that's a lifespan, and then you're now putting someone at a disadvantage. But when you're building a capacity, it's not putting them at a
I
disadvantage.
think that's great, the whole teach Amanda Fish thing. Like, I think that's brilliant, love it. I guess then that leads into my other question, which is, how then over 5 years are we gonna appreciate a decrease in cost, and what is that cost tied to?
Yeah, so you see a decrease in cost because as we develop competencies, and then some of the ask as we incentivize for people to continue to work in those schools and we build our competency, we no longer have to continue to invest in a third party to help provide some of the leadership coaching.
Third party outside of our staff?
Yes. So you saw with Dr. Taylor, Relay was one of the examples that she mentioned.
Okay.
We made a reduction in Relay because we no longer need as much Relay now. We did the big dosage this year, but now we can begin to pull back on some of that because those skills are now built in our it's in our infrastructure now.
Yeah, like HMH into reading, et cetera, like where
To
you,
some
and
extent,
letters and-
HMH. HMH is a thing.
Right.
It's more like the
But
science of
you
reading.
train
Yeah,
and then
the
you
le-
have a trainer
Right.
within that can train everybody else, so you don't have to pay for the
Yeah,
initial.
somewhat, but it's more of using the science of reading format. We invest heavily in teachers being developed in the science of reading now, so that once they develop that skill set, we no longer have to
Right.
invest that amount of money.
And it doesn't matter
4
about
years.
the curriculum or the
Right.
program. They now have the knowledge to teach that way with any tool. They know what the science is. So you don't need as much money because you're building internal capacity.
So is our contract then for just X years and we only pay for what we need intensity-wise? Or is it
Yes.
for X years no matter?
No,
No, it's for X years.
It's a 1-year
need.
contract, and actually,
One-year contract.
we have a conversation that we're going to talk about ensuring that when we meet with our vendors and the ones that we vet, we talk with them from what are the outcomes that we are anticipating as a result of this partnership. So these are not people who come in and just walk this floor and sound good and just give all these buzzwords. Like they have to deliver on. We want to see this change in practice of people and in students. So it is a 1-year contract. We invest in 1 year. We only do 1-year contracts. And then we look at what is the next iteration of this. So that first year, it could be a large contract, but as we go to continuum, that contract does reduce because we have less things that we need to be asking for improvement and sustainability.
That's great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to include that federal funds are also connected to these schools. They receive additional federal funding being on the list. So that for the next 5 years, they'll receive
Yes.
that funding, which is a part of the budget, and it continues to increase. The more schools, the more federal funding they receive.
And so, Dr. Howard Hall, I do want to add to that, the more we can help schools from a baseline, the more of an opportunity we can allow them to use their federal dollars to do other things in their schools. And so it allows them to augment, to enhance what we have put in place. And this helps stabilize that baseline so they can use their Title I dollars for something
Allow
else.
for them, when you talk about the people, because right now, most of our schools invest Title I dollars in people. As they begin to build capacity, in my experience, I will say they will realize that maybe all the people that they needed weren't really needed. It was more about building the capacity of people to do their jobs effectively and efficiently, not just adding people. Let's just add some, because we get that, I just need more people. More people does not equate to better outcomes. You said that.
Yeah, I just hope that there's incentive enough there for that.
I think,
In the department or the group.
well, there's an incentive from the superintendent. So-
I like that.
Big boss says.
Yes.
Ms. Hall.
Dr. Watts, is there going to be a commitment for those people who we definitely want to keep, whose efforts we want to
Yes.
sustain, to stay there, like the principal, the consistency factor?
Yes.
With the people who we do want, so that we're not constantly retraining and restarting.
Absolutely. Unless Dr. Barnes is going to get to that here in the
Okay.
next minute.
Yes, and so that is an important thing to note, and just to be clear, like, we're not doing like a mass movement of people. I met with the principals yesterday and was very clear about where we're going, what we're offering to support their schools, and also offer the invitation. If you feel that this is not the right fit for you, then have a private conversation with me. We still have other places in the district that you can serve and still serve well. And as a result of that, some principals did reach out to me and say, hey, I don't know if this is the right fit for me, but I still want to be in the school district. That is great. But what that does is it makes sure we have the right people and they feel like it's the right thing for them in our schools, and they'll be committed for a period of time. And so we don't have that churn.
Good.
Yep. And there in some cases, we might have to have other conversations, but it is not this gunslinger approach that we just get rid of everybody and bring in a whole new slate. That's not the case.
Mr. Cashmore?
Mr. Cashmore.
The other thing we all need to be cognizant of, and by all I'm saying board members in particular, especially those that have been around for a while, This district has operated for years on, I don't like what's happening in the district, so I'm gonna go plant some seeds in the neighborhood, or I'm gonna reach out to my board member directly, and try to stop change or make change, in indirect political matters. And we just need to understand, if we are demanding movement from where we are now to somewhere else, and the board is generally in agreement on, we want higher standards and better outcomes and accountability but fairness, right? Like, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to move to the next level, but if you don't, we're gonna have to have a hard conversation. We need to stay out of the way as board members based on incomplete information or what we hear from one or two people who don't have the full story. And we need to have some level of trust in the process and leadership that we put in place. And, you know, I've heard people say, well, I've put in X years, it's, you know, I should be promoted to that position just because I've been here X years. And I do think tenure and long-term commitment has a place and a role in the overall assessment of who goes where and does what. But if we're asking the superintendent and staff to change outcomes, and part of it is rigorous review and accountability, we need to stay out of the way as well and stay out of the political side of personnel matters, particularly if we don't have the full story.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so our strategic and investment of leadership, recruitment, and retention. So initial and ongoing annual cost of about $336,000 is the request. This investment targets the single most upstream driver of school underperformance, which is unstable and underprepared school leadership. And without a differentiated incentive package in place, the district cannot attract and retain strong candidates for its highest need schools. The talent market is extremely competitive. In this particular case, I would ask the board to think of this not as a just as a bonus program. It is a competitive premium on a critical position. It is a talent acquisition and retention strategy for the 12 most difficult to staff buildings in our system.
When you think about this, if I'm a principal, I can go be a principal at any school. So why would I go to the hardest school in the district when I could go to any other school, work less hard, and make the same amount of money? So the piece for this is really just around, if we're asking people to go into difficult, chronic, underperforming schools with challenges, deep challenges, we should be compensating them differently than we do the typical average school in the district.
So what's the other side of that? Meaning, if
closer to your mic,
if someone is there for 7, 8 years and the success has not been achieved, at what point do you say they're slacking, or they're getting paid more but they're not producing anything?
Right. So I won't speak to people who have been in place, because first of all, we need to applaud the people who have been in place because they've worked maybe not with this level of investment. They haven't had the recruitment and retention incentives, yet they have been the ones that have raised their hands and said, I'll go, right? And I can't really speak to the support that they've gotten in the past. So when you say the opposite of that, I would just say if they are currently in a school and they have not gotten this level of intentionality and support.
And I'm not talking about past, I'm talking about moving forward as we implement this plan, right? So as we go forward.
What happened, so you're asking what happens if they don't?
Opposite, right.
If they don't, they can't. This is going to be outcomes based.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be very driven by outcomes. And so if people are not producing the outcomes, then we can't allow adult comfort at student expense.
So they don't get 5 years necessarily.
Absolutely not. I'm not gonna wait 5 years for a kid that can't read.
Okay.
You know, so I want to note that the school is in the 5-year strategy.
The
The
school.
principal
Yeah.
may not be in the 5-year. So here's the thing. What we have been faced with sometimes is people bring their best effort, right? And it may not be moving the metric at that school, but it may move the metric at another school.
Right, with less challenges.
What we have to be very, very committed to as a district is when leaders are not executing on the things we ask them to execute on, and they're not delivering at a high level, and particularly after we give these types of supports and philosophical differences come into the room and your will starts being an issue that makes your skill be compromised and not improve student achievement, then we do have to exercise our human resource policies around what is the right fit for this employee within our district or or outside of our district.
So you said the school is under a 5-year, but the principal is under a what year?
We do 1-year contracts.
So I guess my question is, if Principal Smith goes to Stacy Taylor Elementary School to be principal, Stacy Taylor Elementary is suffering.
Stacy's like, "Not on my watch."
And I get there.
Not today. They won't be serving under my watch, but okay.
So, for demonstration purposes. So I get there, they're already struggling. So after a year, if we don't see the progress, I think that that's a quick move to make.
After a year, absolutely. I would not pull the trigger in a year.
Okay.
There's a lot that has to be done in a year.
Exactly.
I don't think I would pull the trigger on a year, but we would have to see evidence of progress.
Something.
Right,
Not
so,
necessarily a test score.
New policies
Right.
maybe
Right.
go in the right direction.
Culture moving in the right way,
Exactly,
all those
exactly.
things.
Right, so we
I just
do
wanna
have
lean into what-
assigned, we will have assigned metrics to each school
Good. There you go.
around what we're anticipating for 1 year of outcomes. And that is growth measures, not just all proficiency, but growth measures where we look at either our mirror data, our map data, as well as our GMAS data. We also will be looking at
Culture,
schools,
suspensions.
climate survey data. We look at quality, you look at their evaluations as how the principal is performing against the Georgia leadership competencies. If we're not making progress, because what we have to always keep in mind, if a student sits in our school for 1 whole year and does not make any growth, then we are responsible for that. And we have to make some critical decisions. And when we have large numbers of students who do not make a year's worth of growth, then we do have to question the leadership of that school. And that may be the first year, or it may be the 5th year, but we cannot turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to that piece.
I just wanted to lean in on what Reverend Smith was talking about and operationalize it, because I think that's where you're trying to get to. We have, for years now, kind of just passed everybody along in their appraisals, and everybody's got their step, which ties into 85% always going up. I fully support that we have worked this past year and a half, probably 2 years, on accountability at the top, transparency at the top. It's now trickling down. Love it. We want staff to be in the right place. So sometimes that is, we see your skills.
Right, but it's just not
Let's
for here.
reassess with the team
Where you
to
should
move
be.
you somewhere where you're better. That's great. And then also, you are not meeting the metrics that have been defined. You are now on an action plan. And in an industry this, in as big of a corporation as we are, there should be a lot of people on action plans.
They're not.
And it doesn't mean that it's their whole entire, it's just maybe one chunk. Your classroom management needs an action plan, or this needs and I'm here for that, Like that, I think, is where we're moving to.
Yes.
I hope it doesn't sound scary. It is part of becoming a better educator. You know, and I would hope that some people are like, hey, thank you. I mean, I gotta we're forced to write our own appraisal, and then your boss gets to agree with it, or not. And there's plenty of times I'm like, oh, no, you can put me on an action plan for that, because I am lacking right there.
I might try that.
That's higher ed. Higher ed's literally like, here are your things, you have to write your own appraisal. It was a lot easier for y'all to,
Yeah, 'cause it takes
somebody
me a
was a
long
genius. But that's not a bad thing, that's just a wake-up call. And it's not a, boom, you're done after that year, it's next year. And it also, I think, helps the principals figure out what teachers need more intentional support. You know, if everybody's satisfactory, do we need to support anybody? But then it also, if you have principals that are on little nuggets of needing assistance, then y'all know who you need to. So it's a change, because for the last, 5, 6 years, we really haven't held to that as much.
Ms. Campbell, then Dr. Hall.
Is this just for leaders?
Fair-
Is this just for leadership?
No, so it's not for leaders, in terms of the bonus or in terms of the
I
accountability?
mean principals, like in the schools that need this differentiation.
The-
Is this just leadership in the schools that are struggling to retain leadership or have
It's just for these
successful-
12 schools.
Okay, but are we also, I guess, okay, the question, are we incentivizing teachers to also stay in these schools and do, right?
Right, so that's a twofold thing. So the next budgetary ask is about incentivizing performance. And then next year's budgetary ask is gonna be around the recruitment of teachers who want to come and work in. So it's a phased approach.
Okay, love that. Then I'll ask this really quick, and before that next slide. Then I looked into this when I read the slides before, and the STEP program in Georgia, and is this mandated that you do STEPs? Is there wiggle room there? The answer is yes, there's a lot of wiggle room.
Mr. Ray?
But in my opinion, the STEP program, it doesn't incentivize betterment.
No.
It says
It's
every year
automatic.
you just get more, no matter, or if you do X. So, but
But it's
merit-
policy for classified.
Right, so, but
No,
if we're gonna do
certified.
merit, then are we gonna still do STEP, and are we gonna put a COLA on it? Because at some point, we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna have to cut it somewhere.
Yeah, there's a lot. You're right. We're going to have to, as we get in the future, start thinking about differentiated pay and all of that. And that's kind of what this is doing in a small model. Going back to Dr. Brigman, I'll come to your point. What Dr. Brigman was talking about was the evaluation. Well, the state, because of COVID, the state has been hold harmless. So there's a Georgia law that says, for all employees, certified employees, that we could, if they get an unsatisfactory evaluation, then that suppresses their step. But we haven't been able to do that since 2019, 2020. Well, Georgia now is released, so now we can start doing that again. Well, human nature would say, well, if you can't do it, then our leaders weren't doing, weren't as vigilant as they could have been, which we're getting back to that, which is Dr. Watts is having us do that now. And that's going to start happening even this year with the being able to do that with unsatisfactory evaluation. So yes, that will start happening. As it relates to, does everybody have to get a step? Yes, under Georgia law, a teacher has to get a step, or something has to be done to stop the step, which is that suppression of step. But in order to suppress the step, we got to have evaluation that indicates that they were having problems and to be able to suppress the step. So that's where we got to get to, is the evaluation, to be able to show that this employee did not improve and therefore they don't get a step. And this is classified and certified. And then when that's done, then we can do it. It's harder to deal with the COLA differentiation between employees because our pay scales are one. We don't have a different pay scale for this employee than that employee. So that may be some more challenging going down the road to say this employee gets a COLA, this employee doesn't. But certainly the step is something we can easily do as we move forward.
And I'm for all of that. I'm for supporting everything that works, especially our staff, especially effective staff, and give them incentives. They should get well compensated, and anything related to literacy, take all our money. But I guess I just worry about the adding on to. I'm glad that we're being intentional about if we're gonna add a 1% to 3% COLA every year and have the steps and have merit-based pay, I mean, come on, you know, at some point.
Agreed.
And how far are we in evaluations, and then I'm done?
We are pretty far in evaluations, but there is still a lot of work to do to make sure that everybody's calibrated, and that's in our strategic plan, and that'll be much of the work that we're doing next year.
Okay.
Dr. Hall, Dr. Howard.
Won't be long at all. Dr. Bremen touched on teaks and leaks regarding evaluations. Teaks and leaks, like evaluating the principal and the teacher. When we talk about differentiation, we have to be very mindful of choice schools, because if I'm at Woodville Tompkins, I'm not worried about not getting my bonus or my step, because I'm in a school where the kids that are enrolled there
Now, if we look at value
are
add,
advanced, unless they're looking at the growth or the gap.
it will be more of value
Right.
add data, not just proficiency.
Right,
You're
because-
right. Some teachers inherit kids that were born on grade level.
They innately
Right?
on
So
grade
we have to
level,
look
right.
at how they are achieving growth with kids, and all kids can grow. Low or high.
All right, tier performance-based bonuses, I think this would jump quickly into the conversation that we just finished. So the initial cost is $0, but the anticipated ongoing cost is about 1.5 million. And so there's no money required in year one of this. However, the structure is built before the funding is activated. This is an incentive that rewards results. This bonus is going to be tied to performance data such as GMAS, AMIRA, MAP, and CCRPI. It's only applied to staff and leaders across these 12 transformation schools that meet the identified metrics. This may look like a individual teacher meets their individual goals that we will have preset, then there's a bonus. But if that PLC, that grade level, meets its goals, then that can be a bonus for everybody in that PLC. However, when you have an entire school and the entire school meets its goals, then there's a bonus. Even though they're at lower scales, it reduces the idea of competition across grade levels, across people not wanting to naturally work in the PLC structure. But most importantly, we are rewarding performance for people who are able to get results out of scenarios above and beyond what would may have not have happened in the previous years. This is more of a design philosophy.
To bring you on this. This is just a let you know, but there's a lot more detail behind this than what you're seeing right now. Yes, ma'am.
I just quickly, and I was waiting until this slide. So this would be a future budget year as you're building towards the system. I think the important part, so one thing, I know there's a lot more, one of the things I'd be interested, I've heard, although in theory, I'm definitely in favor, I've also heard of concerns of, and we've heard of issues where the system is, people work the system in order to get the, so would love more information about that. And also, I think the importance of the evolution of the evaluation process is an important piece of this.
Critical.
To change that mentality of,
Yes.
oh, I can do whatever, like, I can just
Absolutely.
teach and I'm gonna get a raise. So
That's
just
why we
wanna make
started
sure
with
to take that.
evaluations my very first year.
Yeah, okay.
Because I knew we had to ramp up to that. Thank you.
Okay, so our next investment is paraprofessionals small group strategy. So the initial investment and ongoing cost is $697,000. We have paraprofessionals in our schools, but this is expanding the number of paraprofessionals in grades 1, 2, and 3, so they can be used at a higher level around the instructional needs of students. If we do not look at this as an initiative, we then by default put a lot of emphasis on high dosage tutoring, being the force multiplier to ensure that students are advancing. And then so that remediation burden is being dependent on a program versus the impact of human capital. Also, the investment in the paraprofessional over time becomes less expensive than an ongoing contract in high dosage tutoring for the number of students that may have to receive that type of support.
It's important to note here that, yes, we are looking at increasing staffing, but what Dr. Barnes did not mention is this is just not more people, because I am not, contrary to what people believe, I am not a more people. Just let's throw people at it, right? This also is a new structure in how paraprofessionals will be utilized. It's not just that they're helping side by side with the teacher, they're maybe working side by side with a kid. This is truly transforming when we move into small groups. And I think you all saw some of this when you went to Delaware. We saw some of this when we went to Vero Beach, when we visited that district. We would go into a classroom, there would be 4 or 5 small groups happening at the same time, paraprofessional, but the kids were all doing the same work. The same high-quality task was being performed, but the paraprofessionals and the special ed support was all baked into that classroom, and the groups were small. So you walk into a room, you may see 4 adults just for that 30, 45-minute period of time. So it's not just the people, it's what the people will be doing. And that's the piece that he's got to roll out next year with Fidelity.
So there's training coming.
Yes. Yes. Dr. Howard Hall went.
Dr. Howard Hall went.
And Mr. Moss went.
I must have missed that email.
So, you all have any questions?
Okay. All right, so the next set of investments that I'll be presenting to you, these are things that impact the entire district, not just our transformation schools. However, our transformation schools will benefit from these investments, and in some cases, it will be going deeper in their schools. So the first request is an investment in high dosage tutoring and expanding that across more schools. You've heard in quite a different few presentations the impact that high dosage tutoring is happening in our pilot schools. And so we're asking for a larger investment so that we can expand this now across more schools, impact more students, and also expand our math high dosage tutoring as we see positive results beginning to yield from that. But right now we know we have leading data around Ignite that says it is having a major impact in the foundational grades. So considering the number of students that we know we'll have to target across the district, we're asking for an ask of $3.1 million. That's it. I think I'm gonna leave that piece, just leave it right there.
I think we can keep moving, because time is starting to, yeah.
Okay. So our next investment is it's about talent development, and this is continuing to develop the talent across our district with a contract with Relay. As you saw earlier, we are reducing our expenditures there. This is one iteration of Relay now, so now that we have the foundation in place, this now really works with all of our educators on analyzing student data and knowing how to make the right instructional decisions in response to that student data. This is more of a professional development contract. It is not the purchasing materials. The initial ask for here is $385,000. The ongoing cost reduces to $210,000, and that is inclusive of our digital platform where we track the action steps and where we can monitor what schools are doing, what teachers are doing, what principals are doing, so that we can have a level of accountability. Leadership, instructional coaching and support. The budgetary ask here is $1.1 million, and this is the investment in, from what we have already seen positive results where we piloted this, of giving real-time leadership coaching and real-time teacher coaching, providing that support to teachers in the moment, leaders in the moment, so that they are able to build their capacity and improve student outcomes. This is part of that accountabilities module, that we're not just setting expectations, but we are helping people develop the skill set to meet those expectations, and this also gives us the leading data that we need to make either future decisions of how people continue in those roles, or if we have to make other decisions from a HR policy standpoint.
Ms. Hall?
Dr. Barnes, we were talking this morning about the fact that audio enhancement is pretty much filtered through the whole district now. And I've really been keeping an eye on it and looking and reading about it. There's many things in audio enhancement that could help us with the instructional coaching. So something we already have that can be put to use for far more than we originally realized when we brought that program.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next iteration of our coaching is to have audio, to use technology such as audio enhancement to record classrooms. And so we use that in our coaching conversations to analyze it after the fact. It's almost like a football game, and we go into the film room. Where did we go well here? Where did we not? And so then the next iteration is when we go into the classroom, the real-time leader and real-time teacher coaching happens, so that once we identify the moments that a teacher may not have made the best pedagogical approach, now we have a coach to come into the classroom to support them with that.
Or when a teacher has made the right move,
Right.
we can replicate it by showing that to another teacher as an example.
And we can also help our principals. This is the best way. This was a faculty meeting. This was great because you did this, or this was a faculty meeting that went awry because this was missing this.
Yes.
So all the way up, people can be coached
Yes,
and
ma'am.
get to look at what they did and how they could improve it.
And thank you for that. The cultural coaching for people to get better is how our schools get better. All right, leadership development pathways. To ask for our leadership development pathways, which is inclusive of our aspiring principal pathway. This is where we intentionally define what are the competencies needed for teachers to move into teacher leader roles such as MCL or academic coaches, deans of students, assistant principal, principal supervisor. It allows us to develop internal capacity so that we have a actual talent management strategy. We can hire from within and not have to hire and compete external. We have those that are invested within our school district. This builds those competencies and we build out those pathways. So it impacts schools from a school leadership standpoint, it impacts teachers, and it's coupled, like it's married, Mr. Ray and I at the hip on this about what are those competencies for pathways as we recruit and retain people in our district.
It will also enhance retention.
Yep.
If I'm a teacher and one day I do aspire to be the superintendent, the pathway of how to get there is clearly laid out. Nobody has to wonder, how do I get from here to here? Here are the skills that I need, here are all the things, and the support to get me there. So it takes, to me, it's a piece around transparency. It takes out some of the mistrust. Somebody just got that job because they knew somebody. It will all be spelled out. So whether you're a paraprofessional, whether you're, whatever you are, you know how to advance, if you so choose, to the next level.
When people come in our organization, they know how to get to whatever role. Right now, I don't know if that's clearly defined, but this gives us the opportunity to clearly define that. And most recently, we just had 21 expiring principals to complete our pilot program on this. And they learned some phenomenal skills because we built it around the things that assistant principals said that they needed to know in order to get the principalship, and what principals identified that they didn't know prior to getting hired into the principalship, such as finance, HR, and all those things of that nature. And so we have 21 people who have gone through this so far who have stated it has been beneficial, and they will be some of the ones that we interviewing for some of our vacant principalships that come open in the near future.
What is the cost?
So the initial cost is $543,000. That is for the aspiring principal pathway and the teacher development pathways across the district.
Okay.
All right.
That's it. I think the previous slide is the cost of inaction. You all saw those in your original slide deck. But when you talk about the 18 schools that are, that have us on the list right now, that impact enrollment, they have budgetary implications, but most importantly, the key highlight around all these things are true, but there's a child in every classroom in those 18 schools. And we have to do something different to serve each and every child in that building. Or in my opinion, we are indulging in educational malpractice. So to continue to do the same things and get the same results is not an option for me. So we have to do something. This is our best attempt. This is the luxury. This is the Cadillac of what we think needs to happen. But we certainly want you all's opinion, but inaction to me is not an option. It's just not.
Ms. Grabowski.
I appreciate that, Dr. Watts, and I think, we can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results, absolutely. The one question that kind of pops in my mind is, what about the other 6 schools that are on that list?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you got to start somewhere, but it seems that, I don't know, I hope we have something somewhere.
So there are
to
things that,
help those-
and some of these things we won't wait 5 years to bleed them out into
Yeah.
other schools. We won't wait to start doing some of these other things in those schools. As we learn and as we get our traction, we will go ahead and start introducing them to other schools in the district. All right, let's close this section up and.
I just want to hit that point, because I agree. But we did it this year. Well, the district, we didn't. We just voted on it. Scaling up.
Right.
So we're going to start with these, and after the end of year 1, we'll have more data. There'll probably be different schools. We're going to stick with them. So she was quick to
'Cause we
find
gotta
that.
give it
She was
time.
quick to find it. Y'all was ready. She was quick, because I was over there like, I can't find it. Way to go, Denise. But it'll be more budget asked. But if we've got, yes, but if you can come to us with the data, it's a lot easier to go yes. And to change that we set a budget once a year, we change it every single month. We always forget that. We change the
Yes.
budget every single month. We set the budget once a year, we change it all the time. And if you give us data that says this is making a huge difference here, we gotta act so that students don't, so that those schools aren't just left. So be it. We have to make that hard decision, not y'all, but you need to come with the
Yes,
numbers and
the-
say, this is working. So let's cook somewhere else. And if we have to move money around, every year we should get better at figuring out where we could move money from and redirect it. So that's what I really hope to see. And I feel like it's coming.
It's coming.
Dr. Howard.
And we can't forget about the set aside in Title I for parental engagement. There's a set aside that must be used for parent engagement, and it's more than just the books, blanket, and fun type activities.
It's much
We do have set asides for parental involvement, and in some instances we don't address parental engagement. So I'm not saying anything in a negative way about the books, blanket, and fun, because it's an annual activity and the parents are always excited about it. I share it in the neighborhoods, but we must figure out what can we do better to engage our parents.
Agreed. Okay?
Dr. Blanc, this is great. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's almost 3 o'clock. Do we need to take a wiggle break? And then we'll try to roll through the rest. The rest of them are not as meaty as this one was.
We'll make it here.
Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock.
The work of the district never ends.
The goal was to leave at 4, but
We'll
I knew that one was going to take the longest. I don't anticipate the rest of them taking that long. Yeah, Megan will be 5 minutes.
Every time we don't curse it.
It should only be 5 minutes,
It's dependent on us, right?
right. But do you all want to take a wiggle break, or do you want to keep going? Okay, wiggle break.
Wiggle for a minute.
Till what time? 3:05?
305.
We're gonna be losing some board members, but let's try to stay on track.
Everybody, let's get started. Oh, shucky there.
Love this coup.
Thank you. Okay, let's try to keep this moving.
Alrighty, so we can go ahead and jump back in. So now we're going to switch over to seeing the department overview for the Office of Instructional Excellence.
Sir, could you speak a little louder?
Sure. How's that? So we'll switch over now to looking at the department overview for the Office of Instructional Excellence. And so we'll start off with the mandatory category. So you'll see there's about $26.1 million in what we've categorized as mandatory cost. And so these primarily consist of salary figures, but it's from very key positions. So that includes all of your SPED, gifted ESOL teachers, staff, your CTAE programming, some of the more key programming elements that are mandated by QBE. And then on the baseline side, we have a series of other professionals, such as your non-SPED professionals, your CAOs, your one-to-one nurses at all your schools, your behavioral techs, and sort of positions and professionals that you all maybe have decided over the period of time are mandatory, or not mandatory, but rather baseline components of the student experience that are not necessarily mandated by QBE. And so, these are really important staffing costs to highlight, just because, there's a very significant amount of the Office of Instructional Excellence spend that is directly mandated and provided by QBE funding, at least in part. On the non-salary side, in the baseline figures, there's some key programs such as the summer school, some JROTC costs. That's where all your arts, culture, music programming, and things are housed within the baseline figures of your Office of Instructional Excellence. And so that total is about $15.1 million. The final column here, and we'll hand it over to Chief Butler in just a second, but that will be for your strategic spend. There's about $3.1 million in net new initiatives that Dr. Butler will discuss and cover in a little bit more detail. And so in aggregate, that brings us to about $44.3 million for the Office of Instructional Excellence in fiscal year 27. So I will invite Dr. Butler up to the stage, and he'll kind of go in more detail on some of these strategic asks.
Are there any questions before we even jump into that based on this? So I'll do my very best to facilitate a 2-minute drill, recognizing that our time is very limited. But I do think it's important to kind of set the context as I round out the investment in our academic strategies. And so very quickly, I know that Dr. Barnes kind of framed his presentation and his investments by beginning with a theory of action, and certainly want to do the very same here in many regards, and that is if the Office of Instructional Excellence in partnership with school leadership designs and deploys aligned, coherent systems of support, that being our high quality curriculum that you'll see here in just a moment, professional learning and instructional resources, then school leadership, which includes Dr. Barnes's team. The district leadership will be equipped to effectively lead teaching and learning through instructional leadership, strategic resource utilization, and what you heard from Dr. Barnes is a intentional effort to provide consistent coaching and feedback to teachers so that every student in our district has a high quality, baseline, engaging, rigorous learning experience. And so I think it's important, as I share just these 3 investments, how our office works in partnership to support the work that's happening in our schools. And so I'll jump right in and share the proposed investment, which you'll hear and have an opportunity to review in greater detail at the next board meeting is our proposed investment in the high-quality instructional material for mathematics. This aligns directly to our strategic priority of strengthening numeracy. I know we have talked quite a bit around our investment and what's happening in our district with literacy. This is an intentional effort to name math as well as a priority. And what we're proposing is not just a textbook adoption, but it's really, as I shared earlier, an establishment of a coherent approach to standards-aligned instructional support. And really at its core, this is about ensuring consistency across all of our schools. I will say that in year one, we want to take a very disciplined approach to make sure that we are implementing with the kind of fidelity and integrity based on our learned experience from the implementation of our ELA textbook adoption and our ELA strategy that moves us from, again, just pockets of excellence. But essentially this year, year one, we want to focus on grade bands 6 through 12, recognizing that there is a sense of urgency to address what we see as a gap in our middle and high school grades, and really just to stabilize some of the declines in the math CCR-PI scores. You'll notice that there is an approximate, although it doesn't indicate with the signal here the approximate, but an approximate $2.5 million initial cost. Those are dollars that we're still finalizing as we work with our potential partner, and the anticipated full cost should not exceed $8 million. So it's not, while it's not a recurring cost, the full cost of that would not exceed $8 million. I think I kind of bled into some of what we see here in terms of our case for support. This is in year one, a 6-12 math strategy. Again, we will, as we do with all of our programs, apply that return on investment lens. We have shared with you in the previous slide the anticipated impact. But again, these things work in concert with each other, and specifically recognize the high dosage tutoring as a piece of what would be critical in terms of the alignment with what Dr. Barnes has shared earlier. I'll pause there for any questions regarding our math strategy.
This is pretty much mandatory, right? Because we have to adopt new textbooks to support the revised state standards, right?
So I will say this is, if we're looking at it categorically, this is a baseline,
Yeah.
not a mandatory. So we as a district are recommending that we move forward with that. There are resources that our schools have been using for the last 2 or 3 years based on the revised math standards, but this is something that we have recognized based on the data and based on our observations as what needs to happen in terms of an additional resource to ensure consistency.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next investment focuses on, and we have shared this on previous occasions as well, a focus on student well-being. Yes, ma'am.
I was going back to slide, I think it's 68 on here, which you don't have to go back, but one of the things at baseline that we have on here, just to put it out there again, summer school and credit recovery. So I love that you said that we're gonna heed the examples and struggles that we had with ELA in our rollout to do this correctly. That was one of my concerns, so you addressed that, and that's great. But if we keep promoting children without being on grade level in math or ELA, and we're just going to summer school credit recovery type situations, I know we haven't fully audited them yet. I'm hoping internal audit can do that, because I am very worried about what they're actually getting in that time frame. For us to roll all this out and have this big dollar amount with it, which I am, to be clear, totally okay with, as long as they're actually learning the material. So that being a part of this baseline kind of bothers me, the summer
Yes.
credit
'Cause it
recovery
could be
piece.
It could be seen as a strategic investment, but we've always done it, so that's why we put it in baseline.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Again, our ask is an investment really in sustaining a commitment to investing in student well-being through the expansion of our telehealth mental services. This really builds on the pilot launch in the spring of 2025, where we have really seen some strong indicators already of need and effectiveness. And so there is a $150,000 investment to expand access so that additional schools, essentially students, are able to access both school-based and at-home services. And so I'll pause there as part of my 2-minute drill here. Ask if there are any questions. And then I'll close with something that is most likely new for some folks. We have been obviously talking about, continuing to talk about our investment in early learning, and we've had some conversations around the expansion of our 3-year-old program. So the third investment focuses on that early learning, specifically expanding access to 3-year-old students through our mixed age model Montessori classroom at Charles Ellis. There is a $100,000 investment which is designed to really establish the conditions for quality, not simply expanding access. So without going into greater detail, there is not a need to add an additional teacher or an additional classroom specifically. We are leveraging existing resources through our pre-K funding, but we have received approval to stand up a model that allows for our 3-year-olds to be a part of that mixed age model. We recognize, however, that there are additional supports needed to ensure we're able to implement that model, which would be new, as our current 3-year-old programs are standalone. And so this reflects an investment in professional learning. The implementation fidelity, specifically to support 3-year-olds, and then also to ensure that we're maintaining the level of instructional quality in that mixed age model classroom.
Does anyone have a question before I ask something? Okay, Mr. Butler, are we going to try to identify 3-year-old children who would be attending the schools that are in our 12 school package, or is this for any 3-year-olds across the district who want to begin school?
So currently, our approach to adding the 3-year-olds in this particular setting will follow the same model that we have for our 3-year-old programs currently at Gould and at Formey. So that lottery process will look very similar, but we will just have an additional site at the Montessori school.
Well, will we be trying to still get corporate sponsorship, though, to expand this program beyond, I understand what you're saying now, we're trying to build the quality of what we already have, but is there still an effort or someone who's trying to bring in funding for more sites?
Yep, so that work continues. And in the interim, this was a strategy that we explored as a way to leverage existing funding, so being creative in how we grant access to our 3-year-olds in the learning environment. So yes, to your question, that commitment to exploring private dollars to support our 3-year-old expansion of our 3-year-olds will continue.
But if this works, we may need less external funds.
but if we still have to keep it just to children who win the lottery, that's leaving so many children out, and loads of them who may need the extra help way more than the ones who actually win the lottery, you see?
Yes.
There's no way for us to pull those kids in who we know later down the line are gonna need our supports more.
Absolutely. And there are also other efforts underway across the city and county. SPLOST dollars were brought in at the city, county level to look at childcare. Yesterday, I met with the president at Georgia Southern. There's an interest in us partnering to look at maybe a lab school that serves our 3 and 4-year-olds. That's new, kind of developing conversations he and I were innovating and brainstorming about yesterday. So I just want to make sure in the way this is articulated in our strategic plan, yes, we do need to expand seats for early childhood, but at the same time, we need to leverage other partners and community efforts that are doing it too, so it's not just our responsibility. And so this is one strategy, but there are multiple other strategies to get to those seats that you're talking about.
Yes, Ms. Grabowski?
I'm very glad to see this at Charles Ellis in particular. This is something that they have been working on for years because it is part of the authentic Montessori pedagogy to have it start at 3-year-olds, and they have not been able to do that for the myriad of reasons. So I'm very excited this will help them in trying to achieve their American Montessori Society credentials or accreditation, which they've been working very hard to try and do too. So I fully support this and can't wait to see the
I'm excited about it.
3-year-olds in the building.
Yeah, and every child we can get into one of these programs who's going directly into our framework of learning, as opposed to just going to a daycare where, you know, they may sing all day, or, you know, but there's no structured educational component, is going to help us down the line when they get to kindergarten.
It's also an enrollment strategy, because I believe if we can get kids in at 3 and 4-year-olds, they're likely to stay.
Yeah.
Because they've had that experience, and so we can.
Build on that. Okay.
Let me just plug Pooler Elementary in the same way as we're building the school, you know, and we're remodeling it. If it's a lab school like what we had at the University of Georgia, in one of my majors, child and family development, we would go and watch kids and
Yes.
observe. It sounds
Yes.
creepy, but it's very.
Nope. It's truly a lab experience.
But it is.
We had them in
it is
Charlotte as well.
Legitimately evidence-based, and it was, but you need the single, you know, the one view window.
Yes.
And again, I think Montessori, this makes total sense. Pooler Elementary wouldn't be a bad place to integrate
Yes.
some of these classrooms.
Yes,
If we
yes,
can
yes,
get some partners in the community, that would be great.
Yes.
Love this idea.
But we were thinking about the lab school on the campus, because when I've seen the lab schools in other environments, they've actually been on the college campus.
Yeah, it was at Georgia
Yeah.
too, but.
And also making it childcare or support for our employees. Like, how can we also allow that to be a strategy to support employees and their need for childcare? So there's multiple pieces to this. This is just like a nugget.
Yeah, okay.
Out of curiosity, in reference to that statement that you made about enrollment, do we know what the percentage of students leaving our school system is that have been in our school system from the beginning? Does that question make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
We have it.
Okay.
Start at middle school.
When you say in the beginning, do you mean starting at 3, starting at 5, starting at what's the starting
Well,
point?
I'm saying starting at 3 or 5, like at the
Actual
Okay, got it.
at kindergarten.
How many of them stay?
right. How many of them?
Got it.
Right.
I think we can get that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's middle school.
All right. Okay, you can continue, Mr. Butler.
Got you.
That concludes my request.
Mike, drop it.
So with that, you can see the very last column is now built out, and that's how we get to the total in this department of 44 million. It's the same slide you saw at the beginning, just list out those additional things that he just went over.
I had down 50.1.
His is 44.3.
But it's an increase of like 3.1.
Okay, I don't know where I got
It's
50.1
right,
from.
the strategic, I got you.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Let us now transition to our operational and excellence accountability. You're going to hear from Dr. Stacy Taylor around the work that we're doing around performance and data, which is a huge part of this particular pillar. You're also going to hear very briefly from Ms. Davidson, because as you can see in our strategic plan, there is an effort here to modernize transportation and expand opportunities for students. And so you'll see those two specific presentations and proposals, but before you do that, let's see what the financial implications are.
Alrighty, so on to the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance. So to start off with our mandatory costs, we have about $2 million in mandatory costs, which primarily are for the accreditation platform, which is Cognia, as well as some assessment, system design, and implementation, along with the individuals of personnel who are responsible for performing those functions. On the baseline side, there's the remainder of the personnel costs for this department, as well as some staff development opportunities and a small amount of money related to various computer softwares and things that this department uses. As far as the strategic initiatives, once again, the net new items, there's about $600,000 in additional request. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Taylor to talk through some of those additional strategic investments.
Thank you. So good afternoon again. I'll quickly walk you through the strategic investment ask for the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance. The first one is related to district artificial intelligence and emerging technology readiness. And the focus here is, of course, on AI or artificial intelligence. And really what we want to do over the next or the upcoming year is across not just schools but also departments begin to create a shared foundation around artificial intelligence use. Right now we recognize that in the system there is some experimentation or folks are working with AI, but we want to be able to kind of create this baseline understanding. We also want to establish clear guidelines around privacy, security, bias, and other things associated with appropriate use. And we're planning to start with leaders and teachers first, so that expectations and support can be clear and consistent across the system. And we also want to, as part of our AI launch, if you will, for the upcoming year, we want to pilot, explore things. So we want to start small and learn fast, because we, again, know that people, and we've seen some examples today, folks within our system are using and experimenting with AI, and so we want to learn from those things and use those use cases to scale as we go forward. The other thing I want to note around this ask, it doesn't have a budget implication, but it does have a policy implication. As we begin to do more around emerging technology and AI, we do want to begin drafting or looking at policy that sets up the guidance and guardrails for what that looks like within our system. So we will begin to draft policy in the upcoming year. And that is essentially what we're looking to do next year around AI. So it's mainly associated with training for both school leaders and teachers. That's what the financial piece is comprised of. I'll pause here before I go to the next one to see if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. All right, let's forge ahead. The next ask is associated with a position reclassification. Currently, the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance has a leadership development coordinator, and we're looking to reclassify this position. And what this reclassification would allow us to do is to have a dedicated leadership development role. So you've heard a lot from Dr. Barnes around the work that his school team is doing around leadership development, but we recognize that not only do school leaders need development around leadership, and he made the case, I think, in a wonderful way around this whole thing around once you build the capacity, that stays with you and that helps you execute on the things that we're asking our leaders to do, in particular within our strategic plan. But we want to do it for district staff, and right now, much of the leadership development is episodic, if you will. And so what this role would do is not only create coherence, but it would also create consistency, and it would allow us to, similar to what we see on the school side, create that same pathway or pipeline for district leaders so that our very best talent could be cultivated, and then they have a clear pathway or understanding of how they could transition roles within our system as it relates to district leadership. And again, I just want to point out, we are doing soft touches around leadership development now, but what this would do is move us from one-time sessions to more ongoing, predictable cycles around development, allow us to have someone to lead the follow-up and support across the various departments.
I'll just underscore at the district level, we have experts in every department, but skills in a particular content area, technology, finance, is not the same as leadership. You can know your content well, but to lead other people is a different set of skills and strategies. And so again, all of that is happening to some extent, but it's not explicit, it's not clear, it's by happenstance. It's, if you happen to be sitting beside a great leader, maybe you learn from them, but we don't have an explicit strategy right now about leadership development. It's just, if you're with a good person, then maybe you learn from them, but it's not explicitly called out, as well as pathways for people who come in at the district level. They don't know how to go from maybe a coordinator role to a chief level. They don't have those same pathways articulated for them. So they come into these jobs and they're pretty much stuck because it's not clear of how you go to the next level or what skills or competencies you need to advance. Just met with the police department last week, the school-based people, and even our police are asking, like, how do you elevate in this job? If I want to be a detective, what do I need to do? It's not clearly spelled out. So we need it at the district level as much as we do at the school level, because it takes all of us having leadership competencies to do that.
Would this position live in your office or human resources?
My office.
Okay.
Good there? All right, let's forge ahead.
I thought she asked a question.
Yeah,
Oh,
you have a question?
No, I was just asking if it would live in Dr. Taylor's office. And
Yeah, that's what I would like
yes.
to know. Is it professional development?
Yeah.
Is it human resources? Is it,
It's strategy,
It's strategy.
innovation.
but what department, where does it fall?
Under your
Under Dr.
Strategy.
Taylor.
It would fall
Innovation.
under
Okay.
strategy and innovation, and if you think back to the graphic that we saw earlier, we talked about what runs through our plan as far as strategy, and we used to kind of help amplify, and we named leadership. So it would live in my office but work cross-departmental with all of the departments.
Because I had a concern about not having a math.
Talking in the mic.
I had a concern about not having a math person, a person who specializes in math. We have a group of people, so I'm just wondering, I would think, well,
We don't have it and yes, I heard you brought this up several months ago. We have a Cherie Goldman who's North Star every day to work with the community and work internally is around reading. But you're right, we don't have someone who does the same thing in math.
so with this
Is
trumps
that
math,
part of our-
with this position you think is more important than finding someone with the math?
I don't want to compare in terms of importance, but when I think about all the divisions, operations, technology, all the divisions, this person would touch every division leader. But I don't want to compete with
Right,
that.
not to
I do
rank
think
it.
there's an importance there too as well.
But don't we have a 3-person math team? I mean, I know it does. We don't have a Miss Goldman, but we do have the math special. I don't know what their technical.
We do have people dedicated to math. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
But we don't have a Cherie Goldman who goes out and works in the community and
Right.
comes back and helps integrate what's happening in the community with, we don't have that person for math.
So that would
It might be helpful for Mr. Butler to just quickly say what we do have, just so we all know.
Yeah, so the Curriculum and Instruction Department did add and leverage an existing vacant position to bring on board a specialist who, for K-8 specifically, to support the additional work in mathematics. So there is work happening there from the specialist level. we do not have a director position that specializes in math, but we also do not have a director position that specializes in ELA. So while there is a Sherry Goldman from the Literacy Effectiveness Officer that sits in Dr. Taylor's office in the Curriculum and Instruction Department, we do have an elementary executive director and a secondary executive director, and their teams are comprised of math and ELA specialists, and there was an intentional effort to bring on board to ensure that our schools were supported around that particular area.
Yeah, but you have Sherry Goldman and you have curriculum specialists, both with reading in regards background.
Reading is
Sure.
much more built out than math
Yeah.
right now.
Well, with us bringing in the 612 math initiative, it certainly would behoove us, Mr. Butler, to make sure that whoever's in place right now grows with that program until we can. I'm a little surprised that we can't ask for that position, because that's
Yeah.
hugely important.
Yeah, so,
But-
yeah, and I'll just offer this, as Dr. Watts indicated. Certainly acknowledging that some of our directors may have a specialized experience in a content area. I think what's most important for the work that's happening in our department is the not just the technical side and the familiarization with the content, but really their capacity to lead teams, lead implementation in support of our schools. So building that muscle, as Dr. Barnes indicated, is really important for the work that's happening in all of our departments, and in particular, curriculum and instruction, where we've made a significant investment in a resource. So the resource is the resource, and we certainly will provide the professional learning and development as led by our specialists in many cases. But what's important for our directors is that they are positioning those specialists, creating the conditions and the supports, really developing their capacity as well. So that leadership is critical for their work as well.
Anyone else? Okay, Stacey.
Thank you. The next piece is an investment into a formative assessment platform. And what this is going to allow us, or better position us to do, is to have more timely and standards aligned data. So now we do have data from many of our platforms, but we want to pull it into one place. Throughout this conversation today, I've heard a lot around how we're going to measure it, looking at the results, and this will allow us to look at the results in a way that's predictive and aligned to our standards. And so what we want to do is create visibility of data across classrooms, schools, student groups, all the way down to the question level. And what this does is allow us to have real-time data so that we can make adjustments and pivot in enough time so that when there is a gap, we can go in and course correct. And then also it gives us insight to where we really stand predictive-wise. When you talk about all of the summative assessments and where we're going to land, we want to have a greater line of sight into where we really are. And some of the assessments that we're using now, or without this platform is what I should say, without this platform, we have insight, but I just don't know that it's predictive enough, and we want to be more predictive so we understand in real time where we are and what we need to do to get to where we want to go. And the other thing I'll add is we want something that's robust. And so we have something internally that we've built out. My team has done a phenomenal job in building that out, but we're looking for something that's a little bit more robust. Questions here?
Anyone?
All right. Ms. Hall, you good? Can I forward your head? All right. The final data ask, the final budget ask is for a district data dashboard. So this kind of connects, if you will, to the formative assessment platform. What we're wanting to do is to bring in key academic and operational metrics or indicators in a place that's viewable or can be accessed all the way from the classroom and, quite frankly, from the home all the way to the boardroom. So we want to have a dashboard that will allow the board to have a view, the superintendent to have a view, chiefs to have a view, families can log on and be able to see how our district is performing and what our overall organizational health is. And one of the things that we're doing now is we're pulling a lot of reports from a lot of different places, and some of the systems that we currently have are antiquated, and we want to modernize and bring everything under one hub, one place. And again, one of the things that we have not really gotten to, but it's important that we get to with the new strategic plan, is also making sure that the data that we're looking at is available public facing, and we want to build a dashboard that sets us up and allows us not only to have insights internally, but also to be able to share data externally, again, for transparency, and as I mentioned earlier, to have a better sense of how we're performing and what indicators we're meeting and where we are over the life cycle of our strategic plan.
So this would be an external facing platform?
This will be
So-
internal and
Internal.
external.
External.
Internal
Okay.
and external.
Okay.
And
Other
again,
questions?
it would be more than just GMAS data. It would be in the moment, real time
Operational.
measures that you could see.
Well, personally, I think that's great because there's so many like third-party and commercial sources out there that love to twist and
Right.
change data. So being able to have a platform that is clear, transparent, and that we know what the data, I think that's
And it keeps us internally from having to go to 10 places to get it.
right. Right.
All comes to one place.
Yes, yes, Ms. Campbell.
So I was just asking Dr. Barnes, because I pulled up the platform that I was so excited about that you introduced maybe roughly a year ago.
Which one?
But
Achieve It?
I don't know what this is. What is this?
Oh, so that is one of the examples of what my team has built. That is called a district data profile. So you can go on our website at any time, select all schools, or select all schools will be the whole district, or you can select an individual school and kind of see a high level overview for performance. But that is, as Dr. Watts kind of says, in most instances, that's autopsy data. And so what we really want to have is more formative measures so that we know where we are with our leading indicators. And that's an example of how we need something that's more robust. The team did an excellent job of building that, but we need something that's a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, I love this too. I like more. More is always better. In
And
this
that doesn't
regard.
include operational.
Right, that is
Do
just
what?
that is academic.
Stop.
Right.
Except for money.
None of our
But-
operational data is on there.
Right. Well,
Nothing.
one thing I would plug for, and I think someone did maybe at Board Accountability or Audit, whenever this was presented, no, it wasn't Audit, whatever it was including discipline data. And I say that only because, as a plug, because I like this idea, take the money. I think that would be important, not just because we're struggling behaviorally in some schools, but because CCRPI score, which is one of
Right.
the leading indicators on
Yes.
your
Yes.
chart, is
Tied.
yes, and it's disincentivizing teachers, administrators from, carrying out consequence on students when they need to, but it factors negatively into CCRPI, and we can see here what's happening, and we can give them a little grace and say, good for you for taking care of things, though. We're not going to
Right.
hold you,
Right.
hold it against you.
And as we talk about our goals for the strategic plan, you'll hear a bit about that. And the other thing I'll add, I thought you were going to go here, but I want to bring up, is not only will it show us when we aren't doing well, but what the data will allow us to do is see when we are doing well. Because there are many indicators that we're on track for, but we aren't sharing them publicly, and they're scattered internally. So we want to bring all those things together.
That's great.
Right.
So this is kind of a upgrade of the old Chevron reports that we would have on
But more
schools, but
dynamic.
more dynamic than
dynamic.
that.
Piece of paper.
Yes, okay, all right, and
So what Ms.
very changing, flexible, changing, quickly.
Yes, ma'am. What
Okay.
Ms. Campbell showed is kind of the first generation. That's what we did last year. Now we're going to step it up a bit because we've learned more and understand more about what our needs are around data. And again, for me, one of the keys is that it's not just internal, but it's also external, because we do have a lot of people that are creating narratives around how we're performing and what our data is telling them, and we want to get ahead of that and show the true picture of where we are and have those transparent conversations internally and externally.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Thank you all.
Okay.
Where's Megan?
Alrighty, thank you, Dr. Taylor. So just in summary, we now have our full total, our table fully built out to our total of about $5 million ask for the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance, which represents just under $1 million increase from the prior fiscal year. If there are no other questions, we can jump forward to operations.
We're already in operations.
All right.
So I won't do my little spiel again, but you can go over Megan's budget.
Sure. So just to start, so for the mandatory section of the operations budget, there's about $58 million. And so that really represents the cost of transportation for students, some custodial engineering staff salaries, just the general facility maintenance and operations, just maintaining, all the schools, running all the different buildings that the district operates, as well as some of the, more mandatory costs such as fuel, cost of energy, et cetera. On the baseline side, we see an additional $19.4 million, and this represents any administrative staff salaries, other school maintenance, overtime, which is something we've talked about a few times throughout this budget process, but really a right sizing and an accurate budgeting of overtime expenditures for maintenance staff, as well as some additional maintenance for things such as the new turf that has been installed at some of the schools. And then lastly, some additional general fund revenue to support the school nutrition program. With the operations budget, there's about $1.7 million in strategic new initiatives, which will total up to $79.1 million for the operations FY27 request. And now I hand over to Chief Davidson to talk through that $1.7 million ask.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. I'm going to be very expeditious. So, sorry, went the wrong way. Okay, so the first one is no surprise. You have heard of this before. This is our CAT partnership. So for next year, our anticipated budget amount is $40,000. So this is paying the discounted rate that CAT gives to all students, but it will not be an additional discount to the district as we currently had in our pilot. This would provide a card for the students in the choice programs and choice schools that are at an age that could ride the transportation. So CAT data says 6 and up. So any questions on the CAT cards? 6 years old is what they have on their website. Not that I would recommend a 6-year-old riding by themselves, but perhaps that's
ride our bus
something.
by themselves. 6 years? No, it isn't. It's no different. It is no different.
It's very different.
Okay, guys.
Cat bus is
Dr. Bridges,
safer.
you wanna make a statement?
Cat bus is safe.
Yeah. Can we get them to sign a contract this year?
That would be
And-
the goal, yes.
Yes, and can we, in that contract, have some measurable goals and expectations? I mean, I know that the citizenry of Chatham County can't have that when they don't give them their service, but
We can.
again, if we're paying the regular rate, I feel like we could push back a little bit on you need to have at least one, you really should have an inbound and outbound on every route that goes to a choice program if we're gonna enter into this. Now, I don't want to say, don't do it if they can't say that, but there are plenty of times that on some of our choice school programs, they don't even have an inbound or outbound when schools get out.
Correct.
Like, at least, you know if your kid, well, sometimes you don't in the morning either. If you're like, well, they're gonna get up on their own and they're gonna walk to the cat stop and they're gonna be able to use it. Again, parents should, and can we try to get them to be a little bit better on their communication? It's just simple things that they need to do for everybody. Maybe we can be the change agent to get them to be better for Chatham County, because, yeah, we know where I stand.
They did
I
it.
mean, I love that they're letting us do it. I love that we still have the regular student rate. Thank you, CAT board, for last year's awesome rate. That was pretty much pennies. But I will continue to hold them accountable for everybody to have buses on these routes. And if you don't have the bus drivers, I'm sure there's somebody that works for CAT, just like we do every morning. I know somebody in your department every morning is like, well, I know you're supposed to be a fleet mechanic today, but you got your CDL and I need you to drive a route. And I know that happens every day, and thank you for making that happen, because I still don't understand how that job even gets done every morning when people call out at 4:30. But yeah, I'll shut up now.
Okay, Dr. Howard Hall?
The locations, I know at some schools, the CAT stop is right across the street, like at STEM, it's across the street. But I know at Savannah Arts, when my granddaughter sometimes would catch the CAT, it's down the street. So that's, to me, it's not as safe as it would be on a school bus, because school buses take them on campus as opposed to CAT may drop them off a couple of blocks down. So I just thought I'd mention that liability piece.
Most of the kids at STEM now walk further down towards the Oglethorpe Mall anyhow, because all the businesses have gotten mad at them and keep complaining to the school. So a lot of them just walk down Hodgson Memorial. There's a shelter to avoid getting fussed at by the business owner. So they just all get off, and it's walking towards where the bus will be coming. So the bus knows if they see a bunch of middle schoolers walking out, and they'll stop in between stops and pick them up. So.
But I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think if they could walk as a group, or, you know, the kids who were riding can kind of get dismissed. So, yeah.
Just out of curiosity, in reference to what Dr. Bremen said, I'm not arguing or combating that, but I'm just out of the idea of the CAT bus being safer than the school buses. I think that's a concerning statement if it's true, because, I mean, students can get off wherever they desire on the CAT bus. Students only ride the school buses versus the CAT buses being open to the entire population. We have monitors on some of our school buses. Some of our school buses, right? So, and as Dr. Howard Hall just said, the school buses drop you off on the campus. So if with all of those standards or practices, the CAT bus is still safer than our school buses.
I wouldn't say it's safer.
And
That's
I,
me.
yeah, I,
Oh, that's your, that's me.
That's Dr.
That's
Freeman's
me, because I
opinion.
know how I acted on the bus.
We on the record.
Yes.
That's me.
I have no data to support.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
That
they're
is not
safer.
data-driven.
It is a mode of
Gotcha.
transportation that our kids can leverage, but I would not say it's safer.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to forge ahead. We're going to talk just briefly about the Choice Shuttle pilot. You heard this in our last meeting. So this would be for Charles Ellis, and that had a potential students of 443 and Garrison 747. It has an initial cost of about $1.5 million, and that's the anticipated cost, assuming there is no increase in those other expenses, like personnel increase, that would go up. If there was a gas increase, that would go up as well. But right now, our anticipated cost remains the same. All righty. Thank you. Yes, ma'am, just for those two schools, and then we have some metrics that we would review to see if we could bring back a proposal to expand it to additional schools. We want to check safety, we want to check parent satisfaction, and some other metrics, just to do a small little test to see if it's working well before we bring back a proposal to expand.
Anyone else?
All right, thank you.
All right, Kurt, you're up next. Kurt. Yes, I know, I'm trying to keep us moving. So our last pillar, but such an important pillar because it runs across employees, internal stakeholders, and external stakeholders, is our engagement and outreach pillar. It really emphasizes this strengthening of transparency and trust that needs to happen. It's about co-creating with our stakeholders, both internal and external, when we have issues, and seeing that as a key strategy around engagement, and then strengthening the partnerships. I think what is very different from the way many people look at engagement and outreach, they typically are looking at how we engage external, but I'm really putting a lot of emphasis on this as more of our internal culture strategy. It's internal and external. So happy to have A&M present the budget, and then Kurt to share some of our investments.
Alrighty, on to public affairs. So for mandatory costs, there's about $100,000 in the budget request. Primarily, this is going to cover costs associated with, public notice requirements or any coordination and supports needed for public meetings and engaging with the public. In terms of baseline expenditures, that's where we'll see all of our personnel costs, as well as some additional costs for maybe software, production gear, and things like that, for a total of $2.3 million. On the strategic ask side, we have about $500,000 in strategic initiatives. And so I'll pass it off to Kurt to walk through those.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of our thinking today as we enter into the FY27 budget process. You'll see before you on the screen one of the requests that we have here in the communications area of the Public Affairs Division is a more of a targeted approach to the work that we do to share the message and information of our public school system to a wide audience, and wide, but at the same time targeted, because you've heard a lot of discussion about enrollment impact and the loss of students in our public schools for various reasons, whether it's the birth rate or demographic shifts or a school list from the state. We know that we can provide certain levels of influence by doing targeted informational campaigns. So you'll see a $150,000 request in here. This is to add to our existing budget, which we will already be utilized for leveraging external medias, and that's the key thing here. We're really utilizing drivers of external medias under paid, and I don't want to call it advertising because you're all familiar with the use of public funds where you get into that gray area of marketing and advertising. We're talking about a strategic public informational campaign that really drives forth things about district innovation, the value-oriented aspects of public education and school options, and to really build back that interest and excitement about our schools that some folks may not have really initially thought about. So what does that mean? What it does is it drives people to district assets. And that's as much as getting people into our schools, to walk a school, see a school, examine a school, learn some of the people, but they got to hear about it first. And that beyond that will drive them back to other assets that we have, like our existing communication channels, the district website, social medias, and things like that. A lot of ways to measure this as far as impact goes. You have cost per points, which is a typical media way to measure reach and impact. But we also look at how we're meeting our timeline deliverables on campaigns, and even qualitative feedback from stakeholders. And the key thing really, you talk about enrollment influencers. I was a little reluctant to put that on there, but we do got to call it out because while we cannot simply control with a media campaign the numbers of enrollment, it does have an ability to influence that. So that's something we would certainly track. So you see this as a dollar figure ask within the communication side of public affairs. The other part of the request in public affairs is a staffing request. You'll note that as we have continued to grow our department and the great work that we're doing with our communication outputs, we're really doing great work in the area of video production and telling our story through quality images and videos, which we've grown our YouTube channel and many of our other social media channels with these video pieces. Some of them are long format, some of them are quick hits. Ken does a fabulous job and is really driving that work. But a video services coordinator that would support the work that Ken is doing would expand our output and our abilities to create additional productions, because one of the things that's happening is more people, as Ken's out there and he's meeting people and doing productions and we're sharing it widely and getting more views, guess what? More departments say, hey, can Ken come and help us out? We want to be there. We want to be able to provide that quality service through communications, but one person is very difficult to service a district of 5,600 staff and 35,000 students. So you see that as a position request. That would be one FTE that would be included. Now, the other part of our program within public affairs is the newly launched Engagement and Outreach Division. This division is just 1 year old and at the leadership of Ms. Tamika Tribble. Ms. Tribble has done a fantastic job in creating a baseline of engagement and outreach as a framework for how we engage with families, how we engage with business and strategic community partners, and community organizations as well. One thing that we realize that is very helpful that we would need is a family engagement and a community inventory platform. There is a budgetary investment to this based on some of those solutions that we found to be able to utilize it and leverage it fully in the way that we see would have definite impact in the work that we're doing. And you say, well, why would you need that? Because the key thing is there's a transparency component to it. There's also an ROI component to it, which you can tie directly back to the strategic plan to say, where is the alignment of your community organizations and their outcomes that they seek to do against the strategic outcomes of the school district when you lay those on top of each other. This platform is something that would allow us to do that in a very strategic manner in a way that we can really drive KPIs from an ROI standpoint in leveraging community partnerships. Literacy has been one, obviously, that we've done, and I think we've done a really good job in creating a baseline for this type of work. You see that through Love Mentors, for example. You see that through the United Way. Other individuals that we're growing. There's a church that was featured through a fine video production. Mr. Moss mentioned at a recent board meeting where they're providing tutorial services after school for students. Well, this platform allows us to track that very effectively, and not just from the engagement and outreach standpoint, but from a district-wide standpoint. When you talk about a school district that bills almost $50 million a month through this community and the work that we do to keep our lights on and provide the services for the families across Chatham County Public Schools, the investment of $75,000 is a fairly small investment, and that's just an initial cost. We put that out on the street, that could change possibly for even less than what that investment number would be. To continue on the side of engagement and outreach, this also is a position request. This is coming direct from the work that Ms. Tribble's doing in her team in doing an assessment. This position, another FTE requirement here, would be a family and community engagement project coordinator, would primarily provide direct support to the Executive Director of Engagement and Outreach. This person would also do cross-functional work to ensure that projects and initiatives across multiple functional areas, working with other departments and divisions of the district, are being implemented properly, and that we're able to track them across the life cycles of the work that we're doing, and also be able to track those key milestones, cross-functional collaborations, and obviously the outcomes of our initiatives as well. One thing that you'll find here, which was held up very strongly in the work from the team, was bilingual preferred. So this individual coming to the district under this particular job description that we are developing, we would put in there that bilingual would be preferred, because often when we're engaging with our families and that very specific and unique targeted group of individuals, we need to be very nimble and quick, and having a person on staff that is bilingual in the engagement and outreach team would elevate the work that we do from an outreach standpoint. So you see, this is again a FTE request. We're basing it initially on about $150,000, and that includes benefits, but I will say job description is continuing to be in development, could be less than that as well. That concludes the totality of the requests that we're looking for to expand on the work that we're doing in communications and engagement and outreach.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Grabowski.
So I certainly appreciate and support, getting our message out there, but I'm going to go back to we got a low-hanging fruit of our school websites. We have absolutely got to address that, and I want to make sure that Dr. Watts is hearing me too. I'm sorry. Our school websites, we cannot start elevating all this other stuff if we cannot even get our school websites and I know there's nobody's assigned that responsibility, but that is, because I can't support doing all this other stuff until we get the basics right.
Ma'am.
So just sorry.
I know there is a plan to improve our websites, but also making them ADA compliant. I don't want to, we can articulate what that plan is and I can share it with all board members, but yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Okay.
Well, and just to extrapolate on that even larger from a district standpoint, and I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but this is really, really critical. The work, everything you've seen in today's budget preliminary budget request and the strategic plan that we're doing talks about things about improving the basics on the school level and the baseline experience that students are getting and the quality experience that students are getting in our schools. And that isn't so much a data point from a performance on an outcome indicator on a state assessment. It's how do children feel when they leave our schoolhouse every single day, feeling supported, feeling loved, feeling cared for, that they had a quality experience at their schools. Selling that experience is something that really drives interest in our public schools. If we don't deliver on that, then the messaging doesn't line up appropriately.
I think
So-
the place where Ms. Grabowski and I are totally aligned, right now the district owns the story. And what I would like to see more of is our principals and our schools owning their stories more. They are the best communicators of the story because that's who a parent wants to hear from.
Yeah.
They want to hear the principal articulate what happened and what's going to happen. They want to see it on the school website. And that's where we're not fully manifesting that right now.
Well, if I got-
Everything comes through the district. If there's a problem at a school, we respond. And it's like the school is hands off, and I feel like we've got to do a better job. So I am aligned, but I'm also aligned to what you're saying, so I think it's all of that.
Denise, you through?
Well, I was just gonna say, there also has to be consistent, you know, we talk about
Yes.
consistency, like if I got kids at 2 different schools,
Yes.
I need to know that I'm gonna get, you know, messaging from both.
Yes, exactly.
Right, and I'll also add that the external media the key word targeted is really critical for us because we do want to try and get deep and expand our broad reach and impact to get to families that may not necessarily be looking directly at the school system. And through that targeted approach, which we can do that with an appropriate informational off-channel media campaign, will result in those dividends. But again, when they get that's why I talk about go into a school, and that's some of the things that we want to do. Not only drive traffic to the website, but then drive traffic to go into a school, visit a school, see it, try it out, and understand the great things that are happening.
Dr. Brickman?
We got the extra year extension as well on the ADA.
Yes, the
Okay.
feds did
Okay.
extend that
Yeah.
a year.
I didn't know
Yeah,
they
it's a
extended,
year.
but
They-
we were on
the-
track to meet the initial deadline, I thought.
we got another year now,
Well,
so.
we were, but it's been extended. I think Attorney Dennison had some information. He's been tracking that extensively.
So the fact that the ADA thing got extended doesn't change our obligation that the websites be compliant with accessibility standards. We were already subject to that requirement under Section 504 because we're an educational entity and people access that site as part of us being an educational provider. So when the Office of Civil Rights put us under review, it was based on Section 504 with standards that already applied. So now a lot of other entities are facing these same standards.
Now they've extended it.
But for us, it does affect us in some ways, arguably. But when it comes to school-based websites, it's the same as it ever was, basically. as we're
Because
working
I've been
towards
told that our
compliance.
school-based website
Are you?
has got an extra year now at the
It's-
higher ed side of the house.
No, from a standpoint of Section 504,
Which is
we're
different,
held,
yeah.
we're held
Okay.
to Section 504 compliance. And I would think a university would be
But
as well.
I think what he's saying is we have another year to be compliant, whereas the
With-
deadline was this April.
With the ADA standards, but the standards that we had to meet with Section 504 are the same WCAG, these standards that we have to look at for digital accessibility, they're the same standards under 504 that we're
It's not the standard, it's the timeline that
No, but
is
I'm
being
saying,
questioned.
the 504 was already in place.
Okay.
So there is this additional layer of the ADA coming in play, but we already had to be in compliance, and we were cleared by the Office of Civil Rights in terms of our compliance and the things we were doing. And our overall website was part of their main review to say you're now compliant, but we also need to make sure, because the same reasoning that applies to our overall website applies to the school website.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you done, Mr. Hedder?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That concludes the presentation from Public Affairs.
All right. we are gonna wrap up with just a quick overview of everything, kind of putting it all together. For the purposes of today, because we've lost quite a few board members in our meeting today, as I look around the room, and for those that remain, you may be physically present, but we may be losing you in other ways. We are going to hold off on the HR COLA investments and bring that into our very next meeting, if that's okay. I also think that will provide you all time to internalize all the things you've heard today, because at some point I'm going to ask you to rank and give me feedback, because today you got how many new proposals? How many ever?
We gotta do the switches, right? We gotta post.
Yeah.
I need a graphic with it.
So I need to know, like, what things rise to your level of, I'm really excited about this, because today we presented you our very best thinking, but we are all prepared to pivot should we need.
When are you considering this next meeting, Dr. Watts?
When is our next finance committee meeting? Does anybody know?
Wow.
They're
Not-
normally tied to our board meetings, but I don't know.
Hang on, it's in like 2 weeks.
It's the May meeting.
No, is it before that meeting? I didn't think it was.
It's the 13th.
Yeah, I thought it was before the May meeting.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's
before
not
the next
the
board meeting, though.
Well, that's a little late for
It
me.
is, yeah.
I probably need to
You wanna
figure
make it
out.
the same day as board meeting?
Oh,
If,
no.
if we can somehow hook it into the board meeting, the next board meeting, are you all open to that?
I'm gonna have to call in today.
Well, let me ask the chair. Dr. Brigham, will that fit your schedule?
I mean, Wednesdays is my day for y'all.
Okay, all
But-
right. So then we'll plan that. And you said, Mr. Campbell, you'll do a call-in?
Yeah, I'll be out.
Okay, so we'll
But
continue
the good
this.
news is you have all the materials,
Yeah.
right? You got them, so that gives you more time to read. But let's close out, if you can, if you have the cognitive ability today to stay with us just a little bit longer. I have to ask my team that all the time too on Mondays. If y'all have the cognitive wherewithal to stay with us today, there is a Menti meter there for you to use your phones on, for you to kind of give us some indication of what you're excited about, what rises to the level of go forth and plan, because some of these things we need to get going on like now. If you all are
Yeah.
having positive energy, that gives me a signal that I can go ahead and keep moving forward, versus what are some things that maybe, doesn't mean we're not going to do it, but maybe you're not as excited about, if that makes sense.
And if you need to go to menti.com rather than scanning that giant QR code, just go to menti.com and insert 682-9405, 6862-9405.
I think you heard it checked out.
Not quite where that would, 1-800, now who would you call? 6862-9405 at menti.com.
Kids do this every children, and we got grown people that just start losing it after 2 hours.
So we have to put all in there?
I mean, you can hit submit, I think, at any time.
Every time you tap one, it puts it in
It puts it up, and then you can move it up or down. You can hit submit at any time.
Put it in the.
Oh, okay, so you don't have to pick off.
I don't wanna rank it.
Then you don't have to.
So if you don't rank it, then it's basically a zero.
Yeah, it goes to the bottom.
I think that was the.
What was the operation for?
The operation
I'm
was,
messing with you. I'm just messing with Megan.
I'm like, it's okay.
I think we may just have a few more closing budget slides, is that right? Just a summary of kind of what, everything you've seen today. we're
I
ending
got
early.
jobs.
That's why we're ending early.
This is our passion.
We're not early, we're 20 minutes over.
Well,
Is it 4:20?
Earlier.
We got one more minute.
Yes.
Oh, the office is here, hush.
A&M, is there any other additional slides that we need to close with today? You think that's it?
Sorry, we didn't get.
No, that's okay. I appreciate today every comment and every question. The push helps me refine my thinking and guide our team. So whether we agreed or disagreed on a topic today, I leave here feeling like the engagement was good and productive. So I hope you're leaving in the same way. Your feedback, obviously, on this piece is important. But what, again, I want to stress and emphasize is that we are rolling out a new strategic plan. We have to maintain what we do in terms of a baseline and as mandatory, but we also want to be able to turn on a strategic plan that I think will move us into the future. We know that there are choices and trade-offs in how we do and what we invest to make that happen, but we are going to stay committed to presenting our best thinking moving forward. I appreciate everyone leaning in today. Anybody else have any closing comments?
Madam President? Madam President?
I'm sorry, I'm still
She
doing
doing
I
her
wanna get mine
homework.
done.
She doing her homework.
I needed to make sure I got my first choice to the tops. But anyhow, yes, sir, I'm
No,
sorry.
I just wanted to hear your remarks, and I wanted to say Madam President, that's all.
Oh, very good, yes, yes.
Well,
Dr. Watts, as usual, you know my comment is, we are here to support you. We're here to criticize as needed, but basically, our job is to support and then build on your recommendations. So I think that's the spirit everybody is in. Are there any comments from anybody? Ms. Campbell, Dr. Brinkman, Mr. Grabowski? We're dwindling down. Mr. Smith, anything?
now, I'll just say thank you to your team, because I know an awful lot of work went into
Yes,
this. And
thank you.
They've been awesome.
And to the departments that didn't ask for extra money, good job. Y'all know who you are.
Right, we did.
Oh.
They didn't ask. There were a lot of asks.
So if we didn't hear from them today, that means that they did not
That
ask?
means all they have are baseline and mandatory, which are things that you all have always,
Traditional,
Yes.
what was that word, traditional?
yes, there's no strategic new big dollar amount asked from those departments.
I see.
They're basically rolling over their budget from last year.
Far right, blue.
Dr. Watts, did you say that the
Is that a
only
good
thing
thing?
left was HR and the
COLA.
Okay.
So what you've seen today represents about a 3% increase, is that right, A&M?
Everybody stop talking, we're still in meeting.
With the strategic proposals that
Yo, excuse me.
Kurt, you guys.
Excuse me, we're still having, the superintendent is speaking.
With the investments that you all have seen today, that represents about a 3% increase, is that correct? What we have not discussed is any salary adjustments, and that is what accounts for the other 2% getting us to 5%. So what you've seen today would only represent a 3% increase.
Okay, can I ask for one? I'm gonna say simple, but sorry. So, any chance that when you submit it, or when you present it to us, you did a good job on the slide showing us what it looks like at 1%, 2%, 3%. I love that. But we did talk today about what that looks like with merit-based pay.
Yes.
If we would implement COLA as well, and if we're still doing the steps in the way that we're doing them now. Can you just kind of hit those when you deliver it to us? But also to something Dr. Howard Hall said that was on my list. I want to make sure that we're not penalizing teachers that we're trying to get into these schools that need differentiation because they can't help where a student's starting. And we
Right.
want to incentivize them.
Sure.
So we want them to have like use SGPs, like student growth percentiles.
Yes,
Instead
value
of,
add like the charters are using.
yes, instead of we need you to meet here, any growth along this metric, we're going to reward at the same degree, if not maybe more, in
Yes.
schools that were struggling. So.
Yes, we can definitely hit some of that.
Okay.
I want to manage expectations, though. we would not be able to roll out any merit-based pay
This year.
this year. I would need to plan for that, and that would take me a year, and I would want to start communicating that publicly beginning like in January for the next fiscal year. So I want to just manage expectations that I don't want you to think the next time you see this, you're going to see a big merit-based pay, because I can't do that district-wide and have that ready by August. That would blow this whole organization up.
Yes, it would.
We've had that in the state with merit pay, and think in 2015, and there's a lot of emotion when that.
Yes.
I get it,
So
there's
I
a
need
lot
to
of emotion.
plan and
has to be-
handle that very carefully. I'm ready to do it, but I just need to go slow, to go fast.
Okay, anything else before we adjourn?